Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Y'all know what time it is. So that being said, um, all right, uh, Mr. Anderson, what's happening? How's everything going? Hey, LaRue, I hope they're treating you okay out there. And well, I'm not going to put your location on blast, but in the nation of which you are, I think you said it in comments, but I'm trying to remember exactly if it was public or private. So that being said, if you were in now and you're listening and you wanted the sound of my voice, it is probably Friday night where you are. As a matter of fact, I'm sure it's Friday night still. If you were anywhere in the U.S., except maybe Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, I think they are in Eastern time zone. No, I don't think that they're in the time zone that's further east than east. Um, and so that being said, uh, yeah, so it's Friday night for you all. You are the ones that are paying attention. And what's happening, Dennis? What's going on? Um, so yeah, Passport OG, what's happening, man? Um, I don't think you've been in. I've been in Discord looking a few times over the course of the week while I was moving. I don't think either of us have really been in Discord that much though. Um, but yeah, I got the new setup going. Thanks a million. Um, it's a lot. It was a lot, a whole lot, and I'm glad I rented that car that I did because I had too many errands to run. And I mean, I moved into a fully furnished unit for the faculty here, but there was still a lot. I mean, a good bit. You know, I had to get bathroom rugs because there is the whole place has no carpet, and frankly, you don't need it because of the humidity here. Um, so it's all hard flooring, even in the, of course, in the bathroom. But when you step out, you don't want to slip. So I had to go and get these mats. And they didn't have any of the rubber mats, which is good. But I mean, you know, basic things like that. No shower curtains. They don't even have rods or those slots where you can put the rods in. So ain't no shower curtains in here. They just got tubs. So fortunately, they've got those nozzles, shower nozzles, so that you can just, if you needed to take the equivalent of a shower, you sit in the tub and aim the nozzle at you. But you know, some water's gonna get on the floor, so you need something to dry that mother cuss word up. And the floor is not going to dry out that quickly here. Man, I did laundry yesterday. That I had to go and get detergent too. I did laundry yesterday, and this will crack y'all up a little bit. Most of the a lot of places in the kingdom don't really have dryer machines. It's not that they're not available, but not a lot of people use them because they don't have to. In most of the kingdom, it's a desert, it's dry, so you hang your clothes up. At least I thought so. But when you're in the coast, when you're on the coast, that's a different story. So I'll put it like this. Let's say, for instance, in Mecca, which is about a 40-minute drive from Jeddah. Jeddah's on the coast. You're in Mecca, you can hang your clothes out on the line and you can hang them indoors. You run an AC, the climate's already dry. Your clothes will dry up in a few hours. Even jeans could dry up in about 3.5 hours. Man, you mess around and do that on one of these coastal cities, even indoors with the AC running. I know I did that. I hung my jeans out. You know, the tops of my jeans are still wet. I think the legs are dry. Let me see. I can't. Nope, I take that back. Even my pajama pants, even they are not. Uh, they're not fully dry yet. Pillowcases are, I think. But yeah, it's a different story. So I see why they had the dryer in here. They got to have it here. Um, because if you got to have your clothes ready in a short time, then yeah, your jeans can take almost a day to dry completely. And I do have jeans out here because they're absorbent, but I probably shouldn't. Uh, So it's a different climate out here. It's just like the climate in which I grew up on that Gulf Coast. This is this is just like a Gulf Coast climate. I'm kind of getting homesick, and uh, soon as my wife comes here, I think we're going to go to one of them seafood spots because I'm sure they're going to have seafood here. It's like some places you just know you can smell it or feel it in the air when you get out of your car, you get out of the plane. You gonna know you just know they're gonna have good seafood. Um, and this is the coast of Saudi is no exception in that regard. So it's been quite the move. I mean, I put it to y'all like this. First, I had to get them to transfer. I had to get my last employer, with whom I have been employed since I got into this country. First job in this country was with them, and I had to get them to agree to this. And fortunately, some people were looking out for me. But in all honesty, man, no joke. I'm telling y'all, they did this before. They were like, okay, we'll let you transfer. It's like they did a layoff. They laid me off before. A little under a year ago, I think they laid me off before. And then when they did the layoff, they said, okay, you can transfer to anybody. Once another employer asks to transfer your account, we'll go ahead and agree. So they did that. And of course, it took a long time to find a job because everybody was doing layoffs and everybody was saying, well, if we do hire another teacher, we'll just underpay you, especially if we're in a location that's worth working in. Now, we might pay a little better if we're in some little Bedouin crap hole, where the students are going to be pieces of crap and they all walk in speaking English in your Arabic. I mean, speaking Arabic in your English class, and then they're getting complaining because you tell them, look, we got to practice English here, which is the program. But pretty much everybody was the same way. Everybody was like, yeah, if it's worth working here, then you're not going to be paid enough to take care of your family. And so I finally found somebody that was willing. They were going to match my previous salary because they couldn't get any teachers. So they finally called me up and about the end of November and said, hey, Black, come on now. We'll up your salary. Come on, work with us. I said, all right, cool. And then because they were all Saudis and one Jordanian, they were real nice, but they were also very late. And so the HR head didn't put in a request to transfer over my sponsorship in time. So the old employer said, well, you know what? Everybody that we try to put in this Bedouin town called Hafarabatin, close to Kuwait, real Bedouin, backwards and expensive. The worst of the big city and the countryside all rolled into one, right? Y'all know they got them little towns like that in the US. You got some of them small towns and medium-sized cities where it's crowded enough to have bad traffic and crime and all that, but you ain't got no entertainment and none of the perks of living in a place like that. No exposure, just the problems. Yeah, Hafarabatin is like that. So they try to offer me that job, and I told a lady on the phone, I refuse to go because that's a long, 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 long hike away from where my wife is because she's working in the same city. I said, it's a long hike. And don't tell me about a car ride because I'm leaving the car with her. It's safer for her. That means I'd have to take a bus. Y'all can kiss my grits. You're talking about a 31-hour bus trip. Don't even suggest to me that town Hafid again. I don't want to hear it. Don't say anything about it. Now you can pretty much just let me go, and I'll put my I'll take my sponsorship or residency under my wife's as a dependent. I'll pay the fees, but don't do that. I know, A. LaRue, niggas, bruh. Man, don't let anybody tell you that we're the most undeveloped people in the world. That ain't true. Now these folks here trying to get it together. I give them that, but don't let anybody tell you like the only us. Every time somebody says only us, them niggas don't know what they're saying. Now, some things are only us. Some things are only other people. And every group of people has its own specific combination of function and dysfunction. That's when people can say only us. But we can't sit up here and say only Black people do and then put one thing in the blank. or even two. When people say only black folks and then they put three things in a blank in a specific combination, they might be on to something. But that means they got to turn around and say only the Koreans and then another combination, because everybody has it. And that's what I wanted y'all. I've been trying to get people to understand this for a long time. So in any case, I found out that, and this kind of funny. I found out that what I thought was true. My old company was punishing people that refused to go to Hafid. And I said, okay, look, y'all ain't gonna do this to me. Y'all ain't gonna put me in no Hafid. So what we'll do is, and by the way, Hafid means whole. Just HOLE, like a hole in the ground. Not complete, but just HOLE, a hole in the ground. That's what it means. I forgot what Boston means. But yeah, Hafid means whole. So it's, hole in the ground somewhere. And it was so bad that you had people just taking what they could carry with them, going to the border to cross into Kuwait without an exit visa, which means you're banned from the kingdom for 5 years, and just crossing because it was that bad. They lied, said that they had housing company, transportation. So, you just show up and they'll get you to work and back. And your house, they lied and said that. They didn't. I knew they were lying. The lady told me on the phone, I knew she was lying. I said, no, y'all don't have it. Y'all do not have that stuff. If I get there, you're going to put 3 days in a hotel. And then we got to pay to find a place to rent out. And you're talking about like $2,200 a month, probably. So stop lying about this. That's more than in Riyadh. You could get a studio in Riyadh for less than that. So I called the lady for lying. I was like, okay, see, first I'm telling you what it is, and you're saying no, that's not the case. See, now you lying, because now I know you know. You at least know to check into it and see, because I'm telling you that people that are there are telling me that they don't have this stuff. And you swearing they do, that means you're lying. So then I finally got this new job I told y'all about. Went and joined them, and that HR guy kept saying, inshallah, we're going to transfer it tomorrow, because we were busy with interviews. At the end of my second day of work, in the afternoon, got this notice on my phone that the old company had issued the final exit visa because of how long I didn't work. I told him about it. He said, well, we'll ask them to cancel it and then let the comma transfer go through. I was like, yeah, okay, good luck with that. A week after that, I got a phone call from somebody at my old company saying to me, hey, yo, Black, listen, you sitting down? He was a nice guy. He was looking out for me. He said, hey, you sitting down? I was like, no, I'm not. Why? He said, they're not going to approve it. We got the request to cancel the final exit visa. We're not going to approve that. I did put that through, but they called me into an office and started fussing. And so they want you in Riyadh tomorrow to start working at one of these institutes. Now, the institute is funny because they got the split shifts. The institutes usually start at about 8 or 9 in the morning, and then you get a 4-hour break in the afternoon, but you can't go to sleep because it's only 4 hours. And then you go until 8 or 9 in the evening. So you're really up for about 12 hours where you can't really sleep or anything. You can't really rest. You're just not working for 4 of those hours. That split shift has caused some of the older teachers to pass out or collapse or lose their hair because it's 5 days each week doing this. And mind you, you got these students that go in, and they're not bad people, but a lot of the students are going in because dad paid for the lessons. Okay, well, dads are being responsible, but come on, we talking about Bedouins. Y'all don't need me to tell y'all what's happening with the Bedouins. They Bedouins. Y'all know what the deal is. All right, so hold on a second. Let me give shouts out because my Cash App does not make the noise anymore, but I can see it. All right. So from V, shouts out for coming through on the Cash App. And I thank you from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind, as always. So the move was quite the nightmare. Your employers can make it a nightmare at times. That they can object if you're under contract, but if you have finished the contract, like you're laid off or they released you or something like that, they're not supposed to object for nothing. And there are valid reasons that they can reject, and if not, they should go ahead and approve if another company wants you. But they oftentimes will cite a valid reason that ain't true. And honestly, I used to think it was, the Bedouins doing this stuff. And I found out a lot of times it's Jordanians, sometimes Syrians. And I was shocked when I found it out, because the first place I worked at, Jordanians got along well with almost everybody. But I found out that one of the things about Egyptians and Jordanians, I found out, is that they have actually, in large numbers, they have worked to make sure that the country doesn't get too developed. So, they've worked to see to it that doesn't happen. They feel like they could work themselves out of a job. The Sudanese don't do that. The Sudanese, boy, if you hear about Arabs hate black people, they're our enemies and all that stuff, they can be ignorant. But this thing about them being, our enemies, no, let me tell you why. The Sudanese, and mind you, the name Sudan means black. You translate Sudan into to English, it comes from the plural of the word black, because adjectives are like nouns in Arabic in that they can have a plural form. So, like for instance, Majnoon is crazy. Some of y'all have heard that. Well, like a noun, an adjective can also be pluralized, just like sometimes it can be in English. The crazies are here. Well, in Arabic, you can literally translate the crazies are here. Majaneen is crazies. It's the plural form of crazy. So black, like a noun, even though it's an adjective, can be pluralized, and Sudan comes from that. So the Sudanese are known to be real honest. So if one of them is your cashier, everybody knows that Sudanese cashier is going to turn in the money that your business makes. And he's going to do it for his salary that he agreed to take from you. He's not going to start lying to you about this or that, or say, well, he's not going to tell you that some inventory they had to throw out because it rotted and started stinking, and then he's pocketing the money. He's not going to do that. He's going to he's just going to go ahead and collect the price at the register, and he's going to turn all the money in, and he takes a salary. Now, if he can't do that, then he doesn't sign the agreement. So are there liars in Sudan? Well, it's a big population. Somebody's got to be dishonest, but only because of the numbers, and they're human. But as a culture, they hate to lie, and they hate hypocrisy. And this is their reputation. Everybody knows this here. You ask anybody, they'll tell you, you do not put a Sudanese and an Egyptian in the same office to work together if money is involved, if they got to handle money. And the Egyptians know this, and they will try to get you to fire the Sudanese for that reason. This is the reputation they got. Well, it was a Sudanese man, didn't know I was a black American, by the way, at first. He didn't know. Sudanese man that was looking out for your boy. I'm sorry, for your man. Shouts out to him. He was helping because he saw that there was a married Muslim American who had been separated from his wife without asking for it, without a request. And the company had a policy against it. So he said, I'm going to help this dude. And they called him into the office and fussed at him before he ever met me face to face. So when he called me to tell me that they weren't going to allow me to go to the other employer, and they were only going to let me go to this institute, he said to me, this is what I'm going to do. I can't make them cancel the exit visa and agree to the Akama transfer. They already called me in the office and fussed and like, why are you helping him? But come into Riyadh tomorrow and we'll get you a contract for a month, because I'm already telling them that I need a native speaker like you to make this project work that I'm going to be starting in February. They put me in charge of it. I told them I need this native speaker, so bring him in for a month, and then I will bring him to my project. Now, I got them thinking that I'm going to be as mean to you as they were going to be. Now, that tells you something right there. I said to him, listen, I appreciate you looking out for your mans and all, but if y'all are saying be in Riyadh tomorrow and you know that my black ass is in another town pretty far away, get me a ticket. There's an airport nearby. Just give me the ticket tomorrow and I'll go. Now, do I need to pack to go for a few days, or do I need to pack as if I'm permanently moving? And he said, yeah, go ahead and bring everything, because you'll be here at least for 4 weeks. And I'll tell them to look for housing for you. They didn't do that. He did get me the ticket. I got on the plane, and the new employer that couldn't get me anymore had offices in Riyadh. So when I got to Riyadh, and all this is happening last December. I got to Riyadh, I went to the office, and then he walked out, and that's when I found out he was Sudanese, when he walked out and met me in the office. And I was like, wait a minute, did he know that he was helping him? Because the way he was helping me out, it's like you would almost think he was African American, or he was just a nice guy. But turned out we both black, but he didn't know it. I knew, of course, but he didn't know. But he was helping. I thought, wait a minute, he's helping me out like he knows, but who told him? And so in any case, he said to me, now, we're going to get you on a month contract with the Institute. They want to stick you there, but you didn't do anything to deserve that. So give them a month. Teach English. You've done a good job doing that before. It's in the reports and in the records and everything. Teach it. I don't know what the students are going to be like, but if you do your job, you won't be in any trouble. And I'll get you on this project with me that's going to start in February. And guess what? He kept his word. But when I was being interviewed for that project, last few days in Riyadh in that stretch, he turned and he said to me that he said, okay, the interview starts at this time. And I went ahead and got on the phone for the interview. Actually, a Microsoft Teams meeting. I don't know why I said got on the phone, but it was a lady from the Philippines who had been told to lie. And that's another thing that was really strange, because they don't usually they're pretty honest and straightforward too. Usually they are. And a Jamaican. I didn't know the Jamaicans lived and worked here in this country, but it was a Jamaican lady. She might have been a U.S. citizen, but she was a Jamaican. I could tell by the way she spoke her English. And I never used patois with her at all. But the way she spoke formal English, I knew she came from Jamaica. So they gave me an interview, and a lady from the Philippines said, the Jamaican said, it's good to finally be able to interview you. I requested you earlier, and I was told we couldn't have you because of you being at that institute. And then there was a silence, and then she said, oh wait, no, I'm sorry, that was someone else that I was told I couldn't have, but I am glad to be interviewing you. And I realized that what happened was the lady from the Philippines was telling her, go on, you don't say that, don't tell him that. You could tell by the pause. I said, oh, okay, all right. So I ain't supposed to know that they trying to screw me over. What's going on, Mr. Shug? You? Yeah, hey, LaRue, you got a pernt, bruh. A lot of times they do be hating. And the Egyptians that don't act like that, of course, the Egyptians that won't do that. But the Egyptians who don't act like that get shunned by other Egyptians. Other Egyptians don't associate with them. Did you know that Egyptians actually make fun of the honest ones amongst them? Does that sound kind of familiar to you? So, to make a long story short, I wasn't supposed to know about this, and I did. Um, found out about it anyway. So fast forward, I worked for the new project. I was accepted on it, and I worked on the new project from February up until now. Um, my last day on that old project was 9 days ago. It was the 10th, and I finished. And then I went to the office of my old company on the 15th, and I was like, "Look, the new employer said that they're gonna cancel the job off if y'all don't hurry up and agree to this transfer. Now do what y'all got to do, but agree." And I was nice to some folks, and they started being nice to me back. But then there was this one Bedouin cat. Why do I call him Bedouin? I don't care what his last name was. It's a tribal last name. That's one thing. It's a typical um, tribal family name here. But when I went to him and started talking, he was like, I don't speak English. And that's kind of strange in that office, but it's not a requirement. And so I said to him in Arabic, "Are you responsible for the Akama transfers?" And he said, "Yeah, that's me." I said, "Okay, um, mine is in process. I'm only asking for today because the new employer is going to cancel the job offer if they don't get it because they're going to think that you object." And he was like, "Okay, look, you got to go downstairs. You got to talk to Mrs. Otabi, and she can explain it to me because I have to get orders from her." And I was like, "Okay, Mrs. Otabi, all right." And then he said, "First floor." So I was like, "Okay, cool, thank you." So I went down first floor. I met her. I actually found her, and I met her. And she said, "Okay, got it. Hold on." She went inside. A lady that I knew came outside. A lady named Iman. I'd met her before. She came outside. She was like, "I heard you out here. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" And I was like, "Well, I know that there's a procedure before it can be agreed to. So I was waiting for the procedure to be finished. And now that I know that all the other steps have been done, then I came here because I wasn't going to ask anybody to do stuff out of sequence where you can't do it. But once that sequence was finished, I came here to make sure the rest of the sequence of steps was followed. But they're going to cancel it." And so she said, "Okay, hold on." So a whole lot of steps happened. But when I went up to talk to the Bedouin again, I was like, "Assalamu alaikum, brother. Did either one of those two ladies explain it to you? Did Mrs. Utabi or I forgot the other lady's name?" I said, "Did Mrs. Utabi or the other lady explain anything?" He said, "First floor." And he didn't even use the right word for floor or level. I was like, "What?" So I turned to the lady next to her. I said, "Ma'am, did you understand this word?" She said, "Oh, yeah. In this context, it means floor number one." It's like, "Oh, okay. All right, cool. Thank you. Thank you." So I turned to him and I said, "Okay, sir, I already went there. What I'm asking is, did they contact you? Did they tell you what you needed to know?" And he said, "Oh, no, they didn't." So that means this man did not understand my Arabic. And it always happens like that. I don't use Arabic a lot anymore here because when people see, everybody here either speaks two languages, and that in which case they answer me in English anyway, no matter which language I use with them, or they only speak Arabic, but they only speak slang. They don't speak even formal, proper Arabic. So when I speak that to them, they don't understand anyway. And they start talking in broken Indian Arabic like I'm some kind of caveman. Those are the only two things that happen. So either they're bilingual and we can communicate and they choose English, or they're not bilingual. We can't communicate because they don't even speak proper Arabic. So the education gap here is like that. It doesn't really come in. It's not as nuanced, and it's not on the same broad spectrum that it is um, over there a lot of times in the West. Here, it's pretty much their language skills reflect education, and it's either just slang or slang, formal Arabic, and then English, and that's pretty much it. Those are the ways that these folks know how to talk. Um, and the Bedouins, man, they're real proud of not knowing stuff. And uh, so anyway, I was like, okay, this is going to be quite the experience. At the end of the day, shortly before the office closed, they did the transfer. And so I got the job. And then I rented, when I found out about it, I started packing as best I could. And then I rented a car. And the dude at the car rented, he was real nice. He didn't speak English, but he did speak formal Arabic, proper Arabic. So we were able to converse. And whenever I told him that, hold on, Bitter Muhammad says you can't hear. So I'm going to ask the rest of you to um, put in a one if you can hear. Hold on a second. All right. So I was talking. So if you can hear, thanks for letting me know, A. LaRue. If y'all are able to hear, then I ask for the one. But if okay, all right. Now I didn't say out loud, if you can't hear, press zero, because if you can't hear, you won't hear this. Uh, so hold on a second. Okay, all right. All right, cool. I'm glad that you can hear me, Bit Muhammad. Also, Bit Muhammad. Uh, uh, Wakufa Sinaha Yanan Ku Arko Markale. Setahai Walal. Scouting. All right, so I went to the car rental. I told him, look, I got to rent a car for about 2 days. I'm moving from Riyadh to this new place, and I'm going to turn the car in there. I got to do a one-way rental. And the man said, okay, well, look, I tell you what, you paid for most of the rental. I understand. I initially reserved it like I was going to go back to Riyadh and then catch a ride back to the city here. Turned out to not work out that way. I said to him, look, I just found out that my ride to get from here back to that city when I turn the car in ain't going to work. So I need to turn it in over there. And he said, okay, you can do it. There's going to be a fee for the transfer because this is you're moving from one area to another. So there's going to be a fee for that transfer, but you can pay it at that station when you turn it in. That's fine. We do have the car ready. And he was talking about different details. And whenever I told him that I didn't know a particular word, he didn't start doing the typical dumb Bedouin stuff. He was real professional. So when I say that their language skills and education are not that nuanced, it's pretty much just cut and dry bands and frequencies. This guy was one of the rare exceptions. But he would say, okay, well, I'll spell it, put it in Google Translate, and you'll get it. So we did that, and I learned what I needed to know. Plus, my girlfriend, meaning my wife, called at the time, and she translated some of the terms. And so we got it all taken care of. I got the call for 2 days. When I called the new job, they were like, "Can you go? Can you move at 9 a.m.?" And this is in the afternoon. Wednesday afternoon, he like, "Can you move it? Can you go to this new city? Can you get to the coast at 9?" I said, "Wait, do you mean leave here, leave Riyadh at 9, or do you mean be there at 9?" He said, "Be here at 9." I was like, "You mother cuss word. Boy, I'm gonna put y'all through the ringer for this one." But that meant I had to be up about 4, um, do the drive, get my butt all the way to the coast. Actually, I had to leave even before. You had to leave before 5. Had to be up at about 3:30 because I knew there was going to be some traffic jam somewhere, and turns out there was. So I got there, and when I finally got here, before I could even check into where I was going to be living, because it's company housing, I had to go to the office, passports, all this stuff. And he would bother me about paperwork and everything that wasn't a big deal. And I was like, okay, you know what? I found out he was new, so he was just being extra thorough. But I'm gonna tell y'all, man, it was a lot just to go from one job to another, just for that. But when Tuesday, actually, Tuesday night, before I even went to the main office of my old job, I went to this restaurant that I like with a former student, and I met my boss, the brother from Sudan. And we were chopping it up, and he said, well, yeah, tomorrow go ahead and go into the office because these steps in the sequence have been fulfilled. So tomorrow I'll go in so they can do the rest. And he said to me, now listen, Black, when I first met you, you were talking about stuff that they were trying to do to you. And I thought, no, it's not that personal. They just have a need. But later on, I heard some folks in the main office say, everybody that refused to go to Hafid, give them what they don't want and don't give them anything they want. He said, you turned out to be right. You weren't being paranoid. You were right. They blacklisted y'all. And when he said blacklisted, you all know what I said, right? After he said they blacklisted y'all know what I said to him? I'll let y'all type in the chat. What do you think I said to him? Let me play the Jeopardy music while we're waiting. Hold on, let me turn this Jeopardy music on. There's your Jeopardy music. Hey, LaRue said, suck this fit. Caleb, ding, 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 ding. You got it, brother. Caleb Smith got it. That's exactly what the fuck I said to him. He said they blacklisted y'all, and I looked up from my food and I said, do you mean whitelisted, brother? And he said, he busts out laughing. He said, oh God, I should have known you were going to say that. I forgot who I'm talking to. He said, I forgot who I'm talking to. Yes, I mean whitelisted. Passport OG said, mother cuss word. What's going on, Chaos Rain? What's happening? All right, F Holiday in the Fathermucking building, 007. So I said, yep, whitelisted. Yes. And so we cracked up laughing. We were cracking up, and it was in an Asian restaurant, but we know the people that work there. So we were cracking up, just loud laughing. And he and I, we gave each other the fist bump because it was funny. And then, and the guy that the chef at the restaurant, he's a Muslim from the Philippines. Now he's like me. He became Muslim on his own. He used to be part of the Filipino army, fighting the Muslims in the South and all that. And then in a strange turn of events, I don't fully understand, he became Muslim. So he became a chef and left the army. He's not a chef by training. He's a chef by experience. Really good dude. And like you know how we've all seen some of them Asians that just seem so black in some ways. He's one of them, one of those guys. A lot of Filipinos are actually. So he said, you know, man, you all laughing so loud in country. It's just like how we would be cracking up if we were at an outdoor restaurant in the Philippines, an outdoor restaurant. That was his nice way of saying, y'all laughing a little too loud to be indoors. That's exactly how we would have said the same thing to somebody. Loud in country, right? And but he was joking with us. He's a nice guy. He knows me, and he met my boss, and he was actually so glad to meet a Muslim from Africa. Just like when he met I've been in there with B Deep several times, and B Deep, when you hear this man, shouts out to you, Assalamu alaikum, caught up in Baki, Black Power, till the heart stops and the casket drops. One God, and long live Africa. So yeah, he said they blacklisted y'all, and I was we went through the whole laughing about whitelisted I just told y'all about. But he said, yeah, they did do that. They did. You weren't paranoid. And I told him, I understand why I sound paranoid. I come from a paranoid people. I'll be honest, I do. But we also know when people organize. And that's one of the things we've had to learn. We've had to learn that people will go through great lengths to organize against others. They'll do that before they will do anything to organize on behalf of others. So he and I talked about that, and he gave me the steps. I saw him that night, and I gave him a gift. And I said, look, and of course the dinner was on me. I gave him a gift, and I said, listen, I think this will be the last time I get a chance to see you. And I really appreciate all that help. I told him, you helped me out before you even knew that we might have been possibly related. And he told me, yeah, I tried to do that. I didn't really do anything special, to be honest. I tried, but I didn't succeed. I just made the effort. But it didn't have to do with the fact that we might have been related. I didn't know until the day that we took that ride um, to pick up your bags from that other city where we that job could not transfer you to them. And we saw some of the people I met. I did not know. You're right. I didn't see a photograph of you. I didn't see you at all until you walked in. And even then, how would I know? So no, it didn't have to do with that. I did it because it's right. Um, he said he pretty much told me at the end, if a Muslim can help somebody, we're supposed to do it. And I mean, if we can't, we can't. But if we can, we're supposed to. And to me, that is what separates the races for the most part. That's what separates not just black folks, but that's what separates black folks and tropical Asians from other people. Many people are willing to help out somebody else that's nice to them and respectful, period. Many people are willing to do it. But in terms of why they're willing to do something like that, folks like us tropical folks, from the heat and humidity in which I now live, will usually do things helpful for others because it's just a nice, humane thing to do. You start looking at other groups of people and it gets different. They're willing to help and they're willing to help people. But if they think about why they're willing to do it, it becomes something selfish or something selfish by extension, like, well, we're related. You see where I'm getting? You see where I'm going? Are you putting down what I'm picking up? They may actually do it because it's just one of the better human instincts. But when they start thinking about it, oh, well, you my cousin, or our people are related, or we share this common ancestry or something like that, they sound like it's necessary to do the right thing for somebody, even if that wasn't the initial reason they did it. And that's what separates us. All right, on to better things. Said only black people were blacklisted. That might very well be the truth. That comment didn't show up in the chat in YouTube, on my YouTube window, but on my StreamYard window I could see it, so that's why it just now showed up. Nameless protagonist. Us. Um, let me see. Did this thing just conk out on me? Ooh, that's bad. All right, so hold on. I'm going to plug this. Give me a moment. I'm only distracted because I'm about to preventively plug in this power bank to charge up the router I'm using before it runs out on me. Because the router I got is a 5G router. It's pretty fast and powerful, but if it runs out of juice in the middle of this live stream, it could take a few minutes before I could turn it back on. Let's see here. Here we go. All right. So anyway, to get to why, because I've taken 40 minutes before I even get to the meat of this. I want to thank the Cash App donors. Let's see. I want to thank B. Dickinson, S. Jock, R. Campbell, and today's donor, or for some of you, yesterday's donor. I want to thank V. I'm going to tell you all something about the donations. Matter of fact, you know what? Y'all hold for about 15 seconds. Sorry about this. But yeah, 15 seconds, please. Give me a moment. All right, y'all. I hope that was only 15 seconds. Um, so, about the Cash App donations, when you all have sent in these Cash Apps, I'm going to tell y'all about the business that I started in an Asian nation. Um, we've had some employees, and of course, the businesses take some months. I expected that mine may take about 9 months where I support it before it starts to turn a profit. And we're getting to a point now where I get to send in less each month to support it. So this could very well, in its 9th month, start to function and turn a profit. At the very least, it can get to a point where it doesn't require any more support. But now, would I still do this and take Cash App? Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying right now is that what's sent in goes to that purpose. This is not in an African country yet. That may be next, but I don't have a contact in any part of Africa, developed or undeveloped, since the continent is wide and diverse like that. But I have no contact there to make that a smart business move on my part. I have a contact in, he's actually next door to where I'm starting this, but he's able to travel next door. He's in a position where he can travel across the borders pretty easily. And so he can do this. And that's why I could pick that place. We got employees. How do you pay them? You guys have helped to pay the salaries of the employees and keep things running so that it can one day reach a point. And this last month, I had to send in something specifically for them because of parents that are paying late, and clients and clients that are paying late. So, and we expected that. When I sent in that extra, I told my contact and my agent to tell the employees when he paid them that this came from a bunch of black men, same ones demonized on TV, especially in these 1980s and some 1990s movies. Hell, don't get me started on the 70s movies. I told him to let them know that this came from FBA, Caribbean, and continental African men, Muslim and non-Muslim. Let them know that this salary, even though the business did not make a profit, this salary payment came from them. You did not ask me to tell them this when you all would donate. When y'all come through on Cash App, you're not saying to me, hey man, let your employees know that the salary's coming from me. You're not sitting up like, tell them I paid a salary. You're not saying that. I volunteered to tell them this. And what is the reason? The reason is that we're trained to think that what others think about you is not important at all. The truth is that in between the two extremes. In other parts of the world, people act like their reputation is everything. In other places. Here, a lot of people act like their reputation is everything. They can't deal with not having a good reputation. Over there, you're taught to act like it's nothing, but then your reputation does in fact affect, and this I'm talking about the negative parts, it does affect your life. It does matter. We shouldn't allow it to matter as much as, let's say, the Bedouins do, because the Bedouins will put their reputation above what God said. That's wrong. And on the flip side, you can't act like the way we do. These are two extremes. The truth is somewhere in between. And I realized that it's in between. And so I went ahead and I said, well, let me just throw this in there. Because these employees, a lot of them have another job as teachers. That's one of the reasons why it is that they know how to supply our clients and our customers. So this means that they're in a position to explain whenever asked about what somebody saw on TV or something. They're in a position to explain that no, we actually work for something owned by a Black American. And a lot of them actually don't know that it's any foreigner that owns it. But they do know that the support right now in its initial stages is coming from brothers. And this is one of the main things I wanted to tell y'all about when I came on, decided to go live this morning, my time, because it's 7:09 a.m. here. I was thinking, well, I need to I wanted you all to understand that because you've made the decision that you've made to be red pill aware, to be international in your scope at least, and in your considerations, even if you don't have the chance to leave where you're from. Because of this, you're making allies, even if you didn't mean to. And that's one of the things about reputation. It's not guaranteed to be as good as what you deserve or as bad as what you may deserve. But it is bolstered or supported by what you show, and what you show to others is going to also be subconsciously influenced by what you decide inside when you don't know anyone is looking. Things we do that we think no one knows about, they know. Someone knows. And so you have some measure of control over your reputation, but you don't necessarily have minute by minute and second by second control. You have to make correct decisions and wise decisions early on. And at the very least, if you're doing that, the bad parts of your reputation won't be deserved. But the other thing too is that we do have Black annoyance. Black annoyance is provoked. It's not coming out of nowhere. There's Black annoyance for a reason. But it is still an overreaction. We have to keep that in mind. So that's part of why it is that I've been telling my agent about this support. And I had time to think about this because, ironically, I was very busy with the move, and there's a lot of stuff I didn't really have time to think about. But this did cross my mind. Give me a few seconds. I'm not even going to go mute this time. This is going to be about 3 seconds, but I'm going to turn this AC off because even though it's hot and humid outside, this AC's it's got me about ready to cough in the mic. Hold on, y'all. All right, so sorry about that, but that AC was actually blowing right on me, and I didn't want to start coughing on y'all. Some humidity is good for you. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt my health increasing and getting better just since I moved, and I only got here Wednesday night, you all's time, about midnight for those of you, midnight to 1 o'clock for many of you, and Thursday morning my time. That's when I got here. And actually, I think I needed this humidity for my lungs and for my sinuses. Still clearing out though. I'm seeing an improvement in my health. Absolutely. So the thing about the move though is that while it is, especially when I was driving, it gave me plenty of time to actually think. Even though I focused on the traffic in front of me, I did have more time to think without a whole lot of multitasking because I wasn't interrupted like I would normally be in my job. You know, my last job was pretty much 7 hours each day, and teachers don't normally teach for 7 hours straight. There's usually some break. And at my level of teaching, there's normally more than an hour of break. But for the last 6 months, I didn't have that. So it was 5 days a week, 7 hours straight, no break, constantly being interrupted. And, you know, students want to talk while you're going between classes, and they don't speak quickly because they can't. And I didn't let them know I could speak Arabic because I couldn't afford that. And so that was that meant that I didn't get to do a whole lot of thinking, clearly. And when I took the drive to get from Riyadh to the coast, and that was a long drive, I had more time to think about what I'd learned over the last 6 months. Really, even before that. First thing I'm going to tell you was that B Deep and Mr. Hawsawi, the two brothers I hung out with the most in Riyadh, taught me a lot. Some black students of mine also taught me more. And I'm going to give you all those lessons that I learned right now. I'm going to let you know what those lessons are. But first, I want to give shouts out to them. B Deep, he's got a channel, by the way, B Deep / Dark Matter. He raps, and he raps in English. So that's, you know, that takes work, and it takes training and a lot of thought and a lot of effort, because English and Arabic are not related languages to each other. So I want y'all to keep that in mind. And he would still make time to hang out with me and show me the ropes of Riyadh, not only Riyadh, but to a certain extent also black society. So that I could get a good view as to what it really is like. How similar and how dissimilar is it to what we've experienced in Black America and in Black communities in Canada and in other parts of the Americas. And I'll tell y'all what I've learned. I'm sorry this taken so long, but y'all know I got a whole lot of catching up to do. First thing I learned is that racism here is real, and it's easy for whites to underestimate. And when I say whites, I mean non-black Arabs. They have an easy time underestimating the racism that somebody black will face. The reason is not as malicious as we might think. I also learned that one of the reasons that they make these underestimations is because racism is not systemic. There are people that work in the system and they are racist. And I'm going to talk about that too. But it is not a systemic thing here, whereas in the States, it's actually systemic. Here, it is part and parcel of the culture, and a lot of it is due to ignorance, but it is not systemic. It's part of the culture, but it's not a part of the government system. Now, I was told a few years ago that if somebody called us slaves, and I retaliated by calling them MF, they could sue me and win the case. And if I countersued because they called us slaves, which is illegal, I might still lose the case, be fined $50,000 and be taken behind the courthouse and flogged. But this was also in a very Bedouin area. And that's a court case in which judges might have some discretion based on local culture. When I was told this about 8 years ago, I explained to the friend of mine that was explaining this to me, he was giving me the warning not to harm me. I explained to him that while I appreciated him apprising me of that situation, that I was not willing to accept something like that. And that frankly, if a case like this ever went before a judge and a judge says to me that I owe $50,000 and I'm going to be flogged out back behind the courthouse because I called somebody MF, but they get off the hook for calling us Abid, then that judge is a kafir, disbeliever, apostate, hypocrite. And to the Muslims that are listening, you know how bad these words are. I told him that that's how I would count them, and that I was ready to kill and die, to not take one lick. I'd rather take one final bullet than to take 50 lashes, even if the lashes aren't hard. Told him I'd rather take one final bullet. And I don't care if it starts an interracial and international incident in which black folks and Arabs just start wiping each other out. I don't fib a guck because I'm right and your culture sucks. Because I'm going by the religion. I'm not going by the culture. So racism is a part and parcel of non-black Arab culture. I'm letting y'all know that now. Yes, it's a part of it. Hatred is not. And that's why we black folks get into these arguments about how other groups view us and how do these non-white, non-blacks view us, and we start getting into the nuances and fighting. I'm sorry, but that's because, like I said, we hate nuance. And I'm going to get into this black Islamophobia as well. I said 50 lashes. Yes, sir. That's what he told me. Could have been 50 lashes. And these lashes would not be like with a whip. It would be more like more so with a stick. I'd probably be wearing a shirt. The guy's got to have a book under his arm that can't fall out. But it's 50 of them. So you get about 5 and it's just a little sting, but it's 50 of them. I'm like, look, one of them is bad enough. It's the principle. You know how Big Perm said, it's the principality. I mean, Big Worm. Is what he said. And that's what I was getting at. It's the principality of it. No, you don't punish me for being right, especially if you ain't black. Racism is their culture, but not hatred. Casual racism is their culture here. Where you live, casual, subconscious, hateless, and nonviolent racism, as well as the overt, conscious, hateful, violent racism are both a part and parcel of the white culture where you all live. And that's why we get into arguments. Now, Sarah Garvey loves to go in on Islam, and he gets that from, or I should say he refers to so-called Brother Polite for his references. He refers to him for his points. Let me tell you what the problem is with impolite. I'm not calling him Brother Polite. He's impolite. And that's me being nice. And I'm not speaking from hatred either. I probably should, but I'm not. But to be fair, impolite refers to Malachi York. So let's trace this now. Sarah Garvey, Mr. Islam ain't black enough, and you selling out if you Muslim, you know, him, who otherwise is very correct when it comes to race and gender when they combine. He's very good at attacking black misandry or anti-black misandry. He's good at that. But when it comes down to what is going to be good for black people, he doesn't want somebody not quite black being in a position to tell and correct black folks with certain rules and regulations. And that's because he has not understood the nuance between and the difference between you taking a set of rules for yourself versus you letting somebody else give you these rules. That's where the difference comes in. A lot of people ain't ready for anything that requires discipline, even though we actively practice a lot of self-discipline in our lives. We still don't want anybody else to come along and tell us. And I'm like that. I'm that same way. Yeah, you may be right, but if I think you're going to tell me the right thing for the wrong reasons, you better not even tell me what's right, because I'll beat your ass. I don't trust your reasons for it. So Sarah Garvey turns around and refers to impolite. Well, impolite refers to Malachi York, and impolite said that if Malachi York committed these crimes for which he was locked up 1,000 times, in other words, if he buggered 1,000 kids, impolite's gonna follow Malachi York and worship him. That's what they said. So We don't like a lot of nuance, a lot of knowledge. But when you're willing to take in information, but you're also willing and you insist on being a skeptic, you start to come up with nuanced answers that actually explain very complex things in short sentences. Why do we debate about the racism of non-white, non-black so much? It's real simple. Because we don't know their cultures like they do. And we can't trust them to confess to anything that's going to put them in an unfavorable light. But they still know more than us. Racism amongst non-black Arabs is a part and parcel of the culture, but but not so to the level of actual hatred and violence. That is what is appalling to them. They can understand why the whole entire world would not want to be around us, or let's say not want to marry us, but they cannot understand why police will be allowed to shoot and kill us and get away with it. That goes over their head. So who's more violent then? When they complain about how Wyatts depict them as violent terrorists, y'all know what I mean, the T word, and it's not tourist either. They have a legitimate complaint, but what I say to them is, if you can't stand when they call you that, then you need to watch your damn mouth and stop calling us slaves. Because they actually enslaved us on the basis of race and color. You linguistically profiled us as slaves based on race and color, even though you never singled us out for enslavement. You would enslave your own, Wyatts, us, and anybody else, but you only refer to us as slaves nowadays. But you were linguistically imitating what they actually put into practice, so we get paranoid when we hear you refer to us as slaves, even if you think it's normal and you don't mean any harm. So if you continue to do that, then we're going to imitate them as well and call you the T word, and you better not say nothing. So the next time I correct you and say don't call us slaves, and you go, well, we're all slaves of God, I'm going to turn around and say, yeah, well, we're all supposed to be terrorists against the shaitan too. But you don't like it when I call you that, do you? Because I can take it worse and I can call you a camel rapist. What's it going to be, bruh? You will not insult us for nothing. And while I'm saying this to them in their faces, and sometimes under their own rules, I still have to turn around and say to us, say to my people, that the Arab is not, though they call themselves white, the Arab is not to be confused with the Western Wyatt. Could they be brainwashed in about 2 or 3 generations to hate us and want to wipe us out? I doubt it. But if it did happen, we would see the process before it got that far. We would see it long before it got that far. We could prevent that. Unless we were all blocked from social media and Wyatts were allowed to access social media, but not us. That's the only way that could happen. And even then, I doubt it in this day and age. The other thing is that, as I stated, individuals with power can abuse the power to practice racism from a systemic office, but it's not a systemic thing. So to give you an example of what I mean there, police profiling of black men has ramped up in the last few years in this country. I got this from a man that worked at my old, he worked for my old client, my old employer's client, and from some of the students. They told me this. In recent years, police have profiled. However, I asked one of them, if black officers decide to profile non-black Arabs, can they do it and get away with it? And he said, just as likely as a white guy could get away with it, a black officer could. On one hand, profiling is illegal. It's equally illegal for both. However, it's also equally hard to prove. So here you can fight back. If the police decide that they're going to arrest someone and they don't list that person as being locked up so that the family can find them, which they might do, a black officer can see a black arrested suspect and say, wait, your name is not on the list here, but you're in custody. So let me go ahead and let you call your family, let them know where you are. Who gonna stop them? Now, when you get into the north, far north, and you get into the far south, you get away from these bigger cities, and that's where casual racism is more tolerated, less challenged. And I know that because one of my students is the son of a police officer that was transferred to a city called Tabuk. And when he first moved there, he said that teenagers routinely got arrested for certain things like reckless driving, drifting, things like that, the usual, but that he was always the last one to be released, even though his dad was an officer. The other boys with whom he would be arrested were from there, and their relatives were police officers as well and from there. So they got out first. And I told him, you know, that does have to do with it. The regionalism of it does have something to do with it and the race. And he said, yes, I know. I know. It got better over time as people got to know me and I got to know them. We got used to each other. But yeah, it was, I know that's what it was. But his friend, and this, I learned this the day that I gave my students the assignment where they had to either recite a poem or they had to recite a rap. This is one of the assignments I gave to my students at my last job. I'm supposed to teach them English conversation. Why did I tell them to either come up with a poem or a rap? It's real simple. One, they do it in Arabic. They're proud of Arabic poetry. Great. Do it in English. Let's practice. Two, if that becomes at least possible for you, conversation becomes easier. Vocabulary is going to become easier because you're looking up vocabulary words to put together poems and rhyme in English. And if you don't believe me, ask B Deep Dark Matter. He's got a YouTube channel. I put links up in the community tab to some of his videos. Go and ask him if that's a good way to learn vocabulary of another language. Absolutely. But this does happen. However, here it's not like you can't fight back. And when you do fight back, people from larger cities tend to understand why you fought back. Now, sometimes these Bedouins don't. And Riyadh has a lot of Bedouia in it, but it's that they're the Bedouia. And when I say Bedouia, I mean the ways of being a Bedouin. There, the Bedouia is challenged. It's not just rampant and unchallenged and unchecked like it would be if you go pretty far north or pretty far south. And I don't want to give you the impression that the Bedouins walk around hating you. They don't. They're actually very hospitable, and their hospitality is unmatched on the planet, as far as I know. Their hospitality is great, but their analytical thinking and therefore their consideration of other people's perspectives is not. That's where they're lacking. They can consider your physical comfort. That's where they're really good. But to consider your psychological comfort or even just your perspective, they can't do that. They don't even think analytically about our religion. And this is some things that you're going to see when you go to other places. Ask Passport OG. Some of what I'm saying is going to apply to where he lives. Here's another thing, though, that I wanted you to know that I've learned about here. I suspected this, and I would have bet money on this before I confirmed it, but I was able to confirm it. Just like over there where you live, Black people are not racist against non-Blacks. As a matter of fact, our reactionary bias against non-Blacks in the West is more than it is here. Here, Black folks are not racist against non-Blacks, so this is not a two-way thing. I've heard of one town where you got some Black folks that don't like white people and actually might hate them. I've heard of one town. And I only met one guy with the last name of that town. Only one. He told me about it, but I never met anybody else with that same last name. What's going on, VC Realm? What's good, blood? So we are, in fact, not a racist people, and that seems to be universal. We may be tribalist, classist at times, but for whatever reason, we're not racist. That's there where you are, and that's here. There where you are, where I grew up, we might be reactionarily anti-racist, also called reverse racist. But here, it's not even that. Most of the time here, racism extends only to the point where, it extends no further than a family not wanting anybody in their family to marry someone black, because they do have an idea of some racial purity. They have an idea of tribal purity too. But there are people here that have that notion. A lot of people do, actually. That's actually standard for quasi-whites or white adjacent groups of people, and that includes white or non-black Arabs. And Middle Eastern adjacent people like the Iranians and the Afghans. That's standard, not wanting to mix your blood with black folks. Standard for them, And we don't have that same bias, but we need to start. See, over there where you are, we have the understanding of, okay, they don't want to marry us, fine, don't marry them either. And usually we don't extend that to the women. We say, yeah, okay, you go ahead, pick who you want. Over here, black folks almost never have a bias against marriage of other groups of people based on their DNA sequence. Sometimes culturally based, yes, but DNA sequence pretty much never. No. But the non-black Arab has biases against marrying people from other parts of Asia, if you want to count this as Asia, black folks, hell, even folks amongst their own that are just so dark. The thing is this, though, also non-blacks don't blame black folks for helping each other. Now, they might be afraid to see us united on the basis of race, and that doesn't happen anyway, but they still seem to have some fear of that. But it doesn't go as far as them having a problem with just us helping each other. It's not quite that bad. Now, sometimes when I fight back against some of the things they say, that does, they might look at me and be like, why would you say that? When it comes to opposing their casual racism, they may not understand that. But if they fuck the shuck up for about 2 minutes and let me tell them, they usually understand that point too. So that being said, the next thing is that non-blacks usually think that there isn't real true racism outside of just not wanting to get married, because tribalism is worse. That is the case. And because Western racism skews their view. So they're thinking, well, racist practices are actually illegal here. The West is violently racist. So these two things together make them think that there isn't racism. That's for non-black folks. They think it's not there a lot of times. They're genuinely naive a lot of times. The way I can tell is because when I've had talks with some of them about this, even before I came to Riyadh, when I would have talks with them about it, sometimes they'd say, well, no, there used to be more racism than there is now. It's getting better. It's pretty much not here anymore. And I'll say, wait a minute. When you say to me that you thought I was white, you say, mashallah. But when you describe someone as black, you don't say, mashallah. It's like saying, as God has willed, which is generally given after a compliment. So that means that there's a subconscious racism. Then they'll say, okay, well, if you're defining racism to include that, yes, that does exist. We thought you meant like actual practices and harming someone. We don't believe that. We don't believe that that's okay to do. And it's only the ignorant people that think that that sort of thing is okay. So they really do seem to be naive, and their discussions are vastly different. Whereas, as with Western whites, they just want to shut you down. It's not there. Stop being a victim. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You don't quite hear the same thing here unless you hear it from an Arab that has not only spent a lot of time in the West, but around Western whites. Now, some of them have, and they do tend to say stuff like that. And even then, you can shut them down easily. So that does exist, but you'll know usually when they say it, you'll know why they're saying it. And tribalism here is worse because tribalism has come with violence, and most people today that are teenagers can still remember tribal-based violence when they were kids. It's changed a lot, but they can still remember it. 10 years ago, there was still a good bit of tribal-based violence. Whereas racial violence was not so much the thing. I'm sure there was a time when it was there, but I don't know exactly when it stopped. It stopped before I got here. So blackanoia is provoked, but it's not detailedly correct. And I honestly think that one of the reasons why we are blackanoid, paranoid, and specifically the way that we are, is because we have seen not only other minority groups in the U.S. side against us and side with whites, following that international white supremacy hierarchy. I think the other reason why, I think the nail in the coffin was when we started to see that even people who were supposed to be religiously against that were not. And that's true. I think that was a major nail in that coffin to make us blackanoid. It wasn't just that the Mexicans went into the United States, and I'm using that nationality specifically because they were next door to the U.S. and they were the majority of Spanish speakers in the beginning. I mean, outside of the Puerto Ricans in New York, they were the majority of Spanish speakers in the Western U.S. So it wasn't just that they went in and settled in Texas and California, New Mexico, and quickly showed that they preferred massa over us. It was that on top of them, later on, the Chinese showed that too. Because see, in the 1950s, the Chinese were pretty much just like us, but with a different language. As a matter of fact, Chinese men and black women married. People don't know that. But it was that also the Chinese changed. The Koreans quickly showed who they thought was better. But then on top of that, you had a lot of people coming in from India. And while the majority were Hindu, and that's already white supremacy encoded in a religion anyway. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. That's a religion I'm not prepared to respect for that reason alone, on top of the polytheism. It's not only polytheism, it's white supremacy. That's why their gods are either blue-colored, white, or they're an animal, but never a dark-skinned person except the goddess of destruction, whose name, by the way, means black. The irony of it, right? So then they went on. They went from India to the States and Canada with the Hinduism, and then the Muslims amongst them did the same thing, quickly showed the same preference. After what the British did that Africans never did to them, they quickly did the same thing as the Hindus. And then the Arabs. And when they began to go into the US, and all of these groups were able to enjoy what they enjoyed because of the struggles of Black folks, our parents and grandparents, and then they quickly decided that despite the fact that they shared a religion with Malcolm X, they right off the bat went straight full colonizer. So we had this nail driven into the coffin at different points of the coffin. We didn't make up Black Anoia. I get that. Unfortunately, when it comes down to nuance, we still take that as kryptonite. And that's because we've had a lot of cut and dry preachers in these churches making these entertaining sermons. And that is a part of Black redneckism that to which Thomas Sowell refers. And I can't stand a lot of his political standpoints. But when it comes to history and tracing back dysfunction to particular parts of England and Scotland and Ireland, that makes sense. And so things that we thought were us and part of our heritage, when they're dysfunctional, they actually trace back to these areas. And that unfortunately has leaked into the Black church, which by virtue of segregation should have been immune to that influence anyway. And then that in turn leaked into the way that we think. We hate nuance. We associate any nuanced answer with not wanting to commit to an answer. And there's a time when that is actually true. But we turn around and apply that even in situations where the nuanced answer is the best explanation and the least deceptive one. We've made that mistake. And so therefore, when it comes down to actually knowing the differences between groups of people that may look similar but speak vastly different languages and think differently, we don't come to find these things out. And that's where we fail, because you see, the way we've been divided is because people are willing to look at us and say, well, I'm going to discriminate against them because of their DNA and their appearance, but they're not all the same. And I'm only going to use those differences to divide them from each other, not because I care, but just to keep them from cooperating with each other where it really matters. They apply this to us even when it doesn't matter to them, except for that. We don't turn around and do the same thing. We failed. We don't turn around and say, okay, wait a minute. So you got the Asians, everybody with an epicanthal fold over the eyelid, but they ain't all the same. How do we exploit that so that they can be distracted by each other and stop focusing on us? We didn't learn that. And so consequently, there have been situations in which we didn't exploit it. One, because we weren't interested in making other people fight. And that's a good thing. But also because we were simply not willing to, it's like we had this anti-intellectualism that came from these lower classes from certain parts of England and Scotland and Ireland, to whom Thomas Sowell refers in history with sources. And we apply that with each other. We've accepted that. So when you start talking about, well, you know what? Yeah, I work with this guy. Yeah, we hang out. He's from that country over there. I'm from here. I'm going to see and learn the details of what biases his people may have or not have. Because we sat up and decided, we're going to be real insular. We're going to try to imitate others. We're going to try to copy others when it comes to ways that they make money, thinking that it's just because they work hard and they unite, but we're not going to actually learn things about them and try to clear up any misconceptions we have. We can't actually learn the things that do work. We're too busy believing their hype and masses hype about what worked for them, because that's a very good distraction. It works to their benefit for us to always be trying but not actually succeeding. Well, just work harder. Yeah, that's a great thing for the one that's not going to pay you as hard as you work. Work harder for the same pay? Oh, that's great for them. Why the hell does you think they would say that to you? Just work harder. No, 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 no. It's like telling your car, well, just burn less gas per mile. That's the approach they tend to take to us, and we fell for it. And being willing to understand nuance while not accepting nuance as an excuse to not commit to answers, which itself is a nuanced approach, is our kryptonite. And we're not the only people to have that either. The Bedouins got it too. They don't like nuance. And I know because sometimes they ask me about the US, but when my answers are nuanced and they're not just cut and dry, painted with a broad brush, then they start interrupting my sentences to make these broad statements to ask me if that's true. And I'm like, it can't be that cut and dry. But when I start applying this to them and saying, well, you Bedouins hate education. Wait a minute. No, ninja. You just said, is America dangerous because of the slaves? You just said that with your bomb belt wearing behind. We're not the only ones that had a problem, but we got it. So our ability to learn from each other has been hindered, because when one of us that has lived abroad, like Passport OG or me, then begins to discuss with the rest of us what actually is the case and what's not, then we want to turn around and say, oh, he went soft. I don't care where you live. We love to do that. But what happens when they actually do no more? But on the flip side, there's something else at play here too. When you have lived abroad, like Passport OG and I have, when you have lived abroad, we also have to keep an eye on what's going on back stateside or Canada or wherever we came. We got to look and see what is changing since we have lived abroad. Now, someone told me about that before, and I was lucky that I had enough people back there keeping me in touch with what the developments were and how I could see it. And that's why it is that I'm not buying into this narrative that we Black folks could have gone about things differently at the Montgomery docks. I'm not buying into the narrative that we could have gone about it differently. Now, political alliances and lobbying, these things are good long-term strategies. Do I think that we could learn something from agents? We could learn something from them in terms of what they don't do. They don't worry about the vote. They worry more so about the lobbying. However, their kids are coming out and saying that they only got ahead as far as they did because they weren't Black. And the system allowed that just for that reason. The kids are saying this. So their ability to lobby, which is financially based in and of itself, comes from pretty much them not simply going through as much as we did. They were willing to sell out to make sure that they didn't. But the other thing too is that, see, a politician needs both lobbies and a vote. They need a vote to get them in office, and they need lobbies as feedback to know which way to go. That's the other thing about the politicians. And they need campaign contributions too. They need all these things. We sit up and worry about the vote, the power of which ends after the election. The other groups worry about the campaign contributions, the power of which also ends after the election, but also the lobbying after that. They focus more on keeping in touch and providing the feedback to those who are already elected. And that's what we tend to fail at that. And then when many of us, there are group contingents of us that keep in touch with politicians we may have elected. Many of us that will do that, but understand is why they're willing to not do what we asked them in the first place. Two reasons. Number one, we're darker than the others are. And that's something they're trained to dismiss. Or that's a reason for which they're trained to dismiss, even if it's not malicious and it's subconscious. That does exist. That's one thing about being woke that is real. It's true. The woke are good at addressing subconscious bias. That's why I don't go for the anti-woke movement at every turn. They get it right about gender and wrong about race, generally speaking. Or then they get it right about race, wrong about gender, and then wrong about morality. But again, we're talking about how it is that many of us tend to look to Asians as some sort of example of what we can do. No, they might be good examples of what to not do. But in all honesty, in the United States, I don't know about back in Asia, except for Squid Games, which is based in South Korea, in which a whole bunch of people are in debt because they're pretty much Asian pookies spending money they ain't got and they're financially responsible. However, in the States, I do know that a lot of them they're swimming in debts. They're overspending to keep up appearances because none of them want to look like they're struggling like the Negroes. And I mean struggling with a capital K in the middle. SKRUGGLIN, struggling. They overspend because they have access to more credit than we do. We overspend, they overspend. They can't overspend more because they're allowed to borrow a little bit more because of the perception that they work harder. And so I don't buy into this notion that many of us have taken on that we can look to them and just do what they do. No, they're going to have bigger houses and nicer cars in general because they're allowed to do whatever it takes to get these things. And the other thing too is that the perception of them is simply going to be better. And we drank from the same fountain and gave everybody else their perception. So we're going to have a better perception of them than what they actually deserve. Go live in Chinatown in any of these major cities, and people that ain't even necessarily Chinese got gangs. Because keep in mind, this same model minority always had in these movies their neighborhoods in major metropolitan American cities depicted as not only always being Chinatown and never Koreatown or you see what I'm saying? For one, it was always Chinatown. That's the first thing. No matter what nationalities actually predominate there, it's Chinatown. Secondly, the Chinatowns were always depicted as being these lawless enclaves of these cities. Big Trouble in Little China, as an example. That's the one I can remember the most. And I don't even remember a lot of that movie. And even in their movies, they had the white savior complex. So when I look at like what happened with the Montgomery, Alabama docks, I can't sit up and say, well, others don't have to fight. Yeah, others they're not as attacked physically as often as we are. As often. And when they are, well, if they do fight back, they're championed for it and they're allowed to. And then if they don't, then they're upheld as an example for us. See, they didn't respond with violence. No, shuck that fit. Those two inbred, incest, bestiality practicing specimens on that dock to get out that boat assaulted that security guard. And the rest of the family jumped in and they got what they deserved. And I heard that some white guys were caught up in that and got the stuffing beat out of them. And they were in another boat, weren't even related to the ones that did the initial assault. But by the time these folks came in to protect that security guard, the ones coming in to protect that security, not security guard, he was a co-captain actually, I'm sorry. The ones that went in to protect that older brother, that co-captain, didn't know that these two whites just happened to be there in the neighboring boat and were on the dock. Didn't know. So they thought these were attackers and they whooped them too. That's not the fault of the ones coming in to defend the co-captain. That's the fault of those two that assaulted that co-captain. and their family members. That's their fault. They got those two innocent white folks in trouble. But you do have to somewhat keep up with what is going on in America, specifically Black America, to know why it is that we can learn from other groups, but we cannot blindly follow them. And we also have to understand that yes, the system is set up to respond differently to us doing the same things. So I'm going to leave it off with this because I've been going on for a while. And truthfully told, I'm going to have to look for some private students as well to try to earn a little bit more money. I'm going to say this about Blackanoia before I go. Even though everybody's not an enemy, enough of the world has been an enemy over time for us to have some level of Blackanoia. Paranoia will be justified to a certain extent, or rather distrust. But we have lost that element of wait and see. Let them show who they are. We've lost that element that would balance it out. And so we just got this, we have this Blackanoia that is actually unique to us. It's a paranoia unique to our people. We do have that. Impolite has that. Sarah Garvey has that, and they capitalize on it. And yes, if you become a Black Islamophobe, even if it's for a different reason than a white Islamophobe is Islamophobic, when you become a Black Islamophobe, to me, that is a clear-cut case of that happening to you. If you're just convinced of another religion, you're genuinely convinced of it, okay, then you're supposed to go ahead and follow that for now. Somebody's going to explain it to you after you take your last breath. But what I'm getting at here is that some people are like, well, I could see everything in this being correct, but they don't like Black people. What you mean they? You mean the God who revealed it? You mean the prophets that preached it? You mean they don't like Black people? No. Just because some dusty foot Bedouin claiming to follow them can't remember that we're equal doesn't mean that God and his prophets, peace be to them, don't like Black folks. That's different. And that's an argument that Christians have made oftentimes. And I've given them credit for that before and after I became Muslim. But when you become a Black Islamophobe, it's clear cut right there. You fell for the Blackanoia. But I'm going to say this too. There are some people that are neutral and fair to us. There are. So there's some people that are neutral and fair, and there are people that are just outright against us. There will be people that are in between too, like they're subconsciously biased against us and don't want to mix with us genetically, but they don't see us as less human. And that's generally speaking the Gulf Arab mentality. Now, I mean Gulf Arab. I don't know about the others in that regard. I've heard Egyptians can pretty much be racist. Just racist. I don't like the Zanuga because they can't even pronounce the word Zanuj right. And even then they use it as a pejorative like other Arabs do, even though it just meant Zanzibar at one point, Zanzibar. But that's a different story. Now, I've heard about somebody just outright being racist. They canceled Kevin Hart because he made a reference to Black ancient Egypt. To me, that's racist. What y'all so upset about? 67% of the average Egyptian's DNA today is ancient Egyptian. 67%, as pale as they are. In the North, I mean. 67%. But they're upset only when you refer to them as Black. And Jada Pinkett Smith, with her stupid behind, fell right into that because she went the whole Cleopatra was Black route, when in fact Cleopatra wasn't. Nefertiti and Nefertari were. And she couldn't tell them apart because she's too busy looking for some side ding-a-ling and avoiding accountability for that. With a bald-headed self. And trying to disrespect Will Smith for staying loyal to her. And I'm not even saying that to make him a hero, an example to follow, but it's a big mess. And we've fallen into stuff like this. When we don't like nuance, we fall into dumb stuff like this. Now we sit up here arguing with Egyptians today, modern Egyptians, over their bias and her stupidity. But when it comes to the Gulf Arabs, they're generally neutral. Most of the time, they're going to be neutral and fair when it comes to things that are important because they don't dehumanize us. That's not something that they generally do. They do not dehumanize us. Most of them actually have a bigger problem with Egyptians of any complexion than they do with black folks of any nationality. To tell the truth, I taught a bunch of them. They love me. My students that I just got through teaching bought gifts for me. When I got ready to leave, they threw 5 parties for me. No, 4, I'm sorry. 4 for me, and the 5th one was for all of the ones that worked for my company, but 4 were for me. And they know I'm black. I never let them forget it. Sometimes they forget. I still wouldn't let them forget. But they threw these parties, bought gifts. But one of the students and one of the best English speakers in that whole institute in which I was working said that he did not see Egyptians as human. And he said this during Ramadan. He said, I wouldn't visit Egypt if I was paid. I'm not going to pay to go visit there. You got to pay me and I still ain't going. I'll take the money and run. And the reason he felt comfortable saying this was because he was very clear about one thing. He did not base it on their DNA. He was like, no, it ain't about their DNA. My problem is the way that they think. And I was in no position to argue with him for the same reason that he said that he was confident in his position. I don't understand them when they talk. He does. And he pretty much said stuff they say is horrible. So I still say, even though we do have people that are fair and neutral to us, and that's usually the Southeast Asians, I find they're the ones that are actually fair. They're not a problem. What's going on, Red Lion? I find that in actuality, when you want to look at the people that are not a problem for us, that's pretty much the Southeast Asians. They're not. Laotians, Cambodians. And it's funny because they may not even be the least bit, they may not even think about an afterlife. But Laotians and Cambodians can be fair to us. So by the time you throw in the Catholic Filipinos, the Muslim Filipinos, the Singaporeans, Bruneians, Malaysians, and Indonesians, many of whom are Muslim, by the time you throw them in and they actually believe in an afterlife and a God that made us equal, you're dealing with people that sometimes, and I've seen this with my own eyes, you're dealing with the people that sometimes prefer us over the colonizer. I've seen it with Malaysians. I've seen it with people from the Philippines. They could be conscious. I've seen that. And there was one thing I was going to talk about, but I got interrupted as I was recording, so I'm going to address it now when it's live. There's a video in which some women from Africa that are in the Philippines stop various people from the Philippines, mostly the women though, and ask them, what have you heard about Africa? What do you think about Africa? Now, these are two different questions. What have you heard versus what do you think? Sometimes I could not hear what the ladies from the continent were saying specifically how they framed the question. But sometimes I could hear which one they were asking. And when I could hear it, the answers were different. When the continental sisters, if you want to call them this, ask, what have you heard about Africa? That's when people from the Philippines, men and women alike, would give these negative answers. When they were asked what they think, then that's when they would give more positive answers. Do you see a pattern? Then there are other times when the video switches over to another person from the Philippines answering, but you don't hear exactly which question they were asked. What have you heard versus what do you think? You see how that trick was thrown in there. So you got these Western sisters that are latching on in that video and they're like, passport bros can't wait to get them one of this. Wait till we show them this. No. Shuck that fit. Pay attention. Because see, if I didn't meet people from Southeast Asia here where I was, I just buy into the pro-black narrative. It's not even pro-black, it's pro-whack. Because pro-black means you don't alienate an actual ally. Even if someone is neutral, you don't make him an enemy. And you damn sure don't alienate an ally. That's not pro-black. That's not pro-anybody. But pro-whack, oh yeah. I'd buy into the pro-whack narrative if I didn't know any better. Because I wouldn't know any better, but I've been here. I grew up on the Gulf Coast. We met some Southeast Asians, Vietnamese and otherwise. I've worked here, met plenty of them, a few from Malaysia, Indonesia, many of them from the Philippines. They actually, they're quite friendly, and they're more friendly to us. And I know I was eating at this Indonesian restaurant in Riyadh shortly before I left it. And the guy from Indonesia, he was hard on my former student that's a Saudi, light-skinned guy, but with dreadlocks. He suspects that he's just a light-skinned brother, but his family didn't trace this to be sure. But he got locks. He studied in South Africa, actually. Got into a debate with his mom because she was trying to encourage him to look for the palest skinned women he could marry. He was like, I don't like that. And what the hell is your problem? He's one of them cats, right? He's paler than me. Indonesia guy was cold with him and was real nice with me. A little short, but pretty polite. Now, I'm bald-headed, and I'm somewhat tan depending on what day it is. So the last time we went into that restaurant, my former student took his hat off and showed his locks completely. And when he did that, the Indonesian guy began to, in steps, be nicer. You see, I've seen that happen. So I don't want to see us fall for these narratives that everybody is going to wipe us out and hurt us. Assalamu alaikum, Bilal. And I mean to your dua. May Allah grant you every success in yours too. What you have done and what you will do in the future, inshallah. So when you look at the Southeast Asians, if you black and you're from the continent, or if you're not from the continent, you're from the diaspora, you look at them and you're not going to set, you won't, if you're looking for anti-blackness, you'll damn near have to imagine it. And this is coming from Southeast Asians who the women of whom do bleach themselves. Now, some say, well, you know, if the men want the women to be all light-skinned, as close to white as possible, then what makes them so different from anybody else? It makes them actually more similar to us. Because they're very clear cut. Even with that, they're very clear cut about who's actually a white chick or white at all, man or woman, and who's them. They're actually more similar to us in that regard. And the other thing too is this, what I've noticed about them is that when you give them some of that militancy that would, and you attack the concept of the use of skin bleach, they actually readily accept that. Don't believe me? Artzuk is one of my Indonesian audience members. Shout out to him if he ever hears this. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Apa kabar? Artzuk told his wife, don't buy any skin bleach. He said he's married to a very brown-skinned lady. And he told her, do not touch the skin bleach. Don't do it. And she listened. You all know about the travel OG, Richie Mack, right? Zoom to Thailand is his channel. And he lives with his girlfriend, Elle. Now, if I were in his shoes and I had someone down for me like that, I'd say, well, we're going to marry according to a spiritual tradition, specifically mine, but, you know, we don't have to register it in front of the government. That's how I would have done it. But he's living with her, and the point I'm making is that when she realized that he actually was partial to darker skin, she laid out in the sun. You see? Stop and think about that. She was willing to actually take, in a sense, she was willing to take that. He's told darker skinned Thai women that they're actually not only as equally beautiful as the paler ones, but just as valuable. He's told them this, and they've listened to him. Even sisters from the continent don't readily accept when you tell them, throw out the damn skin bleach. I better never see that in your possession again. Sometimes you will find that your allies are more fair with you than your relatives. That does happen on occasion. So I wanted us to never overlook those who do decide to be neutral and fair. And when you meet a group of people about whom you did not know before, they may look like someone you knew about, but you meet a group of people and you didn't know about this particular group, a tribe, language, or something, some particular ethnicity, let them show you who they are before you say, man, they don't like black people. They're going to side with white against us. Be prepared for them to do that, yeah, but don't assume that's what's going to happen. As soon as you meet them and they ain't black. I know it seems like a very fair thing to do. I mean, I'm sorry, not, it seems like a very easy thing to do, but it's not fair. So this being said, because see, like I said, nuance is necessary. Let them show you who they are. And while telling you this, I'm still saying that we should generally avoid marrying women whose people don't see us as equal. And we know that. Who are they? The people that are confused with Middle Easterners, the Middle East adjacent groups of people. That's one. They don't tend to see us as equals. I'm referring to the Afghans, the Iranians, the Pakistanis, and the Northern Indians. A lot of times even Middle Indians as well. Southern, from what I've been told, it varies. I've been told that in Southern India, the less exposure they have to media, the less biased against us they are. It doesn't tend to follow specifically which color they are. It has more to do with just the media exposure. That's what I've been told. Before I say that that's true or false, I'm going to meet more Southern Indians and find out. So far, the Southern Indians I've met have actually been very fair and neutral. People from Bangladesh had generally been very fair and neutral, but here in Saudi Arabia, they tend to get brainwashed. People who call themselves white, that's another group. And when I say people calling themselves white, that includes the Iranians, the Afghans, maybe Pakistanis. They don't generally say they're white, but we know their attitude. And Middle Easterners that are not black tend to call themselves white. They could be really brown, but if their nose is thin and their hair is straight and they're really dark, they refer to themselves as, they'll say, oh, I'm mixed, I'm half, or they will turn around and say, I'm white, I'm just a dark-skinned white person. You and I would look and say, if you can get that dark, you're not white. And if you can get that dark without sitting in the sun, you black. We would say that. But they call themselves white. I would say, yeah, don't marry their women. Don't do it. And when you see these neck rolling sapphires with all that mother cuss word attitude, tell them to go and marry these men. You see? Go ahead. Edward Allen Anderson, shouts out to you, man. He was right about that. Start telling these attitudinal sisters, well, if we ain't fit, then go get you a white or somebody that calls themselves white. Tell them. Go ahead. Let them know that. Let them know that they should try that. Let them know that, no, if you really believe we ain't nothing, then we want to see you do it. We're not going to walk up to him and fight him. We want to see you do it. Let's see how that turns out. Keep us posted, though, sis. So tell them, but we should avoid the women from these groups. If they call themselves white. Now, Eastern European Muslims do tend to act very different. Are they white? They'll tell you if you ask them, because they actually are. They're from Europe. But they don't seem to be as race conscious in actuality. Eastern European Christians tend to want to be Western European. Then there are those that are atheists. I don't know what to make of them. I really don't know. You'd have to tell me. And like I said, people call themselves white. That includes the Middle Easterners that are not black, or they say they're not. Pretty much I'm referring to the non-black Arabs, especially the Bedouins. I'm going to tell you now, be very careful about marrying them Bedouin women. Because understand, when these guys say dumb stuff in front of me, although women are more feminine, of course they are, and they're generally more compassionate, especially in a traditional place like this, and I've seen this. Even though they are like this, I'm letting you know one thing that you need to keep in mind, and this is important to not forget, gentlemen. Don't forget this. These women will still say certain things in private, and that's where their kids pick it up from. Little kids here think that our name is Abd, meaning slave. They could be playing a video game and there's a black character, and they could say something like, okay, if it's a multiplayer game and you pick your characters, one of them might say, all right, I'll be the Abd, or you can be the Abd. No joke. Now, where these little kids get this from, it ain't just their daddies. The daddies ain't snatching them up and whooping that ass. Their mamas ain't either. The other thing, too, is this. Bedouin culture, you're not a stereotype. And that's an important thing to understand, that you're not that. So the Bedouin culture is the original N-word culture, as far as I can trace back. Hold on a second. Yeah. So Bilal said this. Look at what Bilal said. But now take a look at this. So y'all read what he said. I'm sorry about that, Bilal. But for those of you who are wondering who's Bilal, it's Bilal Gadzekpo. Bilal Gadzekpo. He wrote Bilal in Arabic, and Gadzekpo is written in the Roman letters. Sorry about the sound. I just saw that it was dipping in and out. So look at what he said next. The caste system preceding organized racism was made there. That caste system is in fact racism, and I'm going to prove it to you. The word caste in the ancient Sanskrit language, spoken by the ones that originated that caste system, is Varna. Varna means color. That's what it means. That's probably some of the original racism right there. Now, I got a former colleague from Afghanistan that grew up in Atlanta and in California, Oakland, LA, and San Diego. Parents moved around, right? He's one of them kind of conscious dudes, kind of. But he also thinks that we black folks overreact a little bit. I think so too, but I'm not going to tell him that because, again, we have arrived at the same conclusion for different reasons. That's that nuance again. However, he's generally one of those that does mean well. Now, this man said, I know that racism started with the Aryans. He's talking about the Aryans from the border between Afghanistan and Iran, today's time. There was a group of people that lived along some stretch of the border, both sides of it today, called the Aryans. That's where Hitler got the word Aryan from. The Afghan airline used to be called Ariana. And there's actually a chick from Afghanistan that tried to work in the prawn business. I think her name was Ariana too. Now, I remember because there was an article about her. And the article was it was about her reaction to the U.S. going to fight in her home country. Like, how did she feel about it? I don't remember what she said, because when the article said that she worked in the adult movie business, I was like, never mind. They had a picture of her face, cute, but I was like, never mind. I wasn't even Muslim at that particular time, but I pretty much said, never mind. She ain't supposed to be in that kind of business. And I was never one that said, well, if a woman fornicates, that means all her opinions are wrong. No, I was never one to say that. But in her case, I was like, she's supposed to be Muslim. What's she doing in this business, and why they interviewing her? Bye. So in any case, I would say to avoid them. Now the Bedouins, it's not the Afghans, but the Bedouins, you got to understand, they got that inward culture. Cheating, they just stopped cheating in mass, like up to levels of 90%. They just stopped that recently. And I don't know what the percentages are now. I only said 90% because my students used to tell me that 90% of them cheat. But when I asked them which ones of you were at 90%, none of them raised their hands. I've had some of my former students right now, the ones I just got through teaching, say to me, because they're a little older, they were in school before the cheating stopped. Some of them said, I used to cheat in school. I didn't think it was a big deal. And I would tell them, well, if you cheat here in this institute, we're going to put you out. And if they don't, if the administrators try to sweep it under the rug and I find out, I'll put your name in there as in a newspaper and embarrass y'all. Because I'll be a hero if I get kicked out the country for that. What? I get kicked out of the country for that. That's a story with names and dates. I could sell the story and make more money than I make teaching. So don't cheat. I would tell them this and they would say, oh, we ain't doing that now. No. Black is our teacher. No, we know. But that's Bedouin. It was so bad that people that weren't even Bedouins here, because Bedouins are not the only culture in Saudi. Let's get that clear. It's so bad that non-Bedouin kids would cheat in school because they were outnumbered. So these are the groups I tell you from whose women you should not seek to marry. Now, if you can't have kids, and she can't, and you're not trying to have kids, that's different. But even then, it's not likely to last. If you're going to marry someone like that because you fell in love with her and she fell in love with you, then what I would suggest is that you move to a context away from their people. You move to a location where their people do not predominate and cannot interfere in your marriage. I would suggest that. You have to do that. And what's the reason? You must do so because, frankly, and it's the same reason why I would tell you don't marry the actual Western white woman. You can find that good one, but how you gonna deal with them in-laws? Them in-laws might not hate you, but how you gonna deal with them? They'll forget that you're equal, and they'll forget that your children are equal to theirs. How you gonna deal with them when you find out that there was a family cookout, a barbecue, and they never told your wife because they didn't want your little nappy head kids to show up or you to show up? What happens if they're nice to you and they're actually nicer to you than they are to your kids because your kids are different than all their cousins? Then what? You see, that's one of the reasons I tell y'all avoid that. Avoid them. But now if you get to move to a context that is black and she's going to follow you and live with you there, that's fine. Because see, if your kids are different in appearance from the other black children, they're not as likely to face a systemic discrimination. And even then, it depends on which kind of black folks form the context in which you live. On the continent, it's not likely. Now, Black America, I don't know. You got if you're gonna raise your kids in the Black West around other kids that were raised only by mama and auntie and grandma, and they're really featurist and colorist and texturist and all these other things that the women love to use against the men, then yes, yeah, they'll catch it. But like, I mean, let's say, you decide you're gonna move to Ghana, since Gadzekpo and Bilal Gadzekpo and Charles Courier mentioning Ghana right now. I'll use that as an example. Uh, when if you decide that okay, you've met this woman from one of these other groups that does not tend to look at us as equals, but she's down for you, then what you do is you find a way to live in one of those areas like Ghana, and then see if she'll live there with you because that's where the opportunity is. And if she will, proceed. Go ahead, because you know what? In Ghana, them kids ain't gonna pick on your kids because your kids got brown, loosely curled hair. That's not likely to be the case. So you also have to know, and this is part of nuance, learning what's going to happen in what case, what doesn't happen, where it doesn't happen is part of nuance. And in order to know what your options are, you really got to, you got to have a mindset that's not typical for our people. And when I say our people, I mean, well, it's not stereotypical for our people. Let me rephrase that. And I mean our people in the diaspora, the English speaking Americas. It's not stereotypical. You got to have that non-stereotypical mindset to even learn these things. You, fortunately, in my audience, are not stereotypical, so that helps you. But I'm contributing to this. But you have to understand that when you decide that you're going to marry them, that's what you're going to face, because that's who they are. They're just like that, and they've been that way for so long. I don't even know. Sometimes they'll sit up and say, we can't change, but then the younger generation are. Since that younger generation has not reached marriageable age as a whole yet, as a majority, we're not there yet. There's one last group I'm going to tell you about, and I had to learn about this from Mr. Hawsawi and from B Deep and from some students, former students, black students. I had to learn about this too. Avoid marrying black Middle Eastern women who think of white as normal and black as abnormal, and they imitate whites. If they have that subconscious casual racism themselves and they're black Middle Easterners, it's called uqdatanakas in Arabic. It means inferiority complex. That's pretty much a direct translation. Or uqdatanakas. I'm sorry, I think it's not nakas, but uqdatanakas. Inferiority complex. If they are black Middle Easterners and they have that, avoid it. Avoid them. And if you are in discussion with one of them, double check. Don't say, well, if she doesn't show me that she has an inferiority complex and I'm going to assume she doesn't. It's nice to give the benefit of the doubt, but when it comes to this, you have adequate reason to doubt the benefit. As Amu Yum Yum would say, who's a YouTuber. The reason is this. One of my students, one of the best English speakers, one of the best English speaking students I had in my afternoon shift at my last job is a sister from Jazan. Her father, I think, is half white, half black. Her mother's black, so she comes from a black family. But she has uh, cousins that are not black. When I say white, I don't mean European white. Again, I'm talking Arabs calling themselves white. And she sent me messages explaining to me what it was like in a mixed family. She pretty much said, my brother's beating up some people for calling him slave. A cop stopped him and said he was going to give him a ticket because he wears locks and he knows there's no such law. So he went back and forth with the cop. Now, did the cop do this because of his job? No, nobody told the cop to do it. He's just a cop that had nothing better to do. The sister would not have backed him up on this, but it would have been able to create a problem for her brother. They're not playing when it comes to that. She also said that when it comes down to some of their relatives, some of their non-black relatives don't talk to them anymore, even though they played together as kids. They don't talk to them anymore, and it's because they're black. It's not anything that they've done. They'd rather have black friends than have black relatives. So that's why I tell you all. And she said, I personally refuse to consider marrying a white guy, meaning a white Arab. She said, I personally refuse to consider that. because I've seen it. It's too up close for me. So that's why I tell you all what I tell you about the nuance, how bad it is and how bad it's not. I don't want you to get it wrong. I don't want you to mistakenly blame the innocent for what they didn't do, because you alienate allies and you make enemies out of neutral people, if not allies. I don't want you to do that. On the other hand, I don't want you going in with your guard completely down either. I don't want that happening. I want you all to know and to understand that it can go either way when you meet a new group of people. And even then, you can't lump Arabs in as a block. They're different nationalities with different dialects of Arabic, and their understandings are different. But you got to be ready to respond to both, because see, it seems to me like when some of them show that they can respect black folks and respect us specifically for the struggle that we've had, because they know their people participated in providing that, we seem like we all surprised, we don't believe it, and we tell them, man, go back over there with your people. And then we also act shocked when some of them come along and show some hostility towards us. Then we act all surprised. We didn't do nothing to y'all. Why can't I marry your daughter? Both of these are extremes. And so I'm telling you all this because I want us to be able to avoid both extremes. I want us to be able to respond to exactly what we encounter, and even then make sure that we see what we think we're seeing. And if we encounter something that is hostile, what is the reason? Should you answer the racism? Absolutely. Are you wrong because you want to make sure that it's racism and not nationalism or classism or religious bias? Sure, that's okay. Somebody says, man, why you ain't tell that mother cuss word off? I'm not sure what their reason was. I don't know what the problem was. I don't know if it was because of my passport, my citizenship, nationality, language, religion, or race. I'm not sure which one it is. I didn't get a chance to verify. I just went ahead and left them alone and quit talking to them, period, because they don't know how to act. That's fine. But I don't want you just reacting erratically to what's not there. So last thing I'll go into is gender conflicts lately. You know, the meat of it all. And I've already gone for 2.5 hours, but let me see. Let me check the Cash App, see if there's any. Okay, all right. No. All right, nothing new. So the last donor was V. So I'm going to tell y'all straight away. V has paid for all this today, and I appreciate that. Having shared some of that with B. Dickerson, S. Jock, and R. Campbell, shouts out to y'all. Um, all right, so let me even out this balance right quick. So, getting to this gender war thing, Kiki Palmer, she has been coming up in my feed lately because of a situation with Darius Jackson. And Kiki Palmer got exactly to which modern women requested and demanded: equal access. She's the latest lesson. She is now being requested to provide for a man and baby. She has had to house that man, and she is now being requested to fight for custody or give custody, but you can't just have it. Since men can love and bond to children and care for them, she's now seeing all of this. This is what she wanted. She is now finding out that to be all bossed up and be boss babe and boss bitch, and I'm saying it because that's how a lot of them say it. She's finding out that you have to pay the cost to be the boss. And I know she's upset and hurt and probably wants to fight the world about it, but she requested it. It's what she wanted. She sought it out. She went looking for it, and she got it. She thought that she was going to order from the restaurant and the man was going to pay the bill. She thought she was going to be boss babe while Darius Jackson paid all that bill. No. I would say, number one, I'm not going to tell you all to just fornicate and conceive these babies. Sure, married, just not in front of the state. Now, for me, I'm married in Saudi Arabia, but that's different because the laws here are not like they are over there. But where you all live, okay, sure, marry according to your spiritual tradition, but just not in front of the state. However, when you finally do, and matter of fact, you know what? When you do, look for her to make more money. Don't let them ratchet up the hypergamy while they ratchet up the feminism. At least Keke Palmer pretty much was not inconsistent with those two things. She didn't say you got to do all this stuff bigger and better than me in order to qualify for me while I sit up and call myself boss bitch. At least she didn't say that. No, he made less money. I'm sure he's taller than her. I don't know if he's older or not, doesn't matter. But I know he made a good bit of money, but not as much as her. He's not as famous as her. That's good. That's actually a good thing. I applaud that. In the West, that's exactly what the hell you should do. If a Western woman wants you to be with them, let them foot the bill. Let them come to you being, generally speaking, better than you in many ways and according to many metrics, because they already say they are. We're just better people. Good, make more money. Matter of fact, you know what? Be taller than me. I want to see what it's like to wrap long legs around my rib cage. Let's see if what they say about the inner private parts of taller women is true. Go ahead and do that. You are within your rights, gentlemen, to sit up and look at women from other countries outside of the West, non-Western nations, more traditional, and say, I will protect and provide for her, and then look at Western women and say, if she wants a shot, she's got to make more, have more, do more, be more, because she said she already is more anyway. You are within your rights to have that double standard for them. As a matter of fact, if you don't, you should make them think you do. She is the latest lesson. And the thing is that she's, what people don't understand is that she's making herself look bad. And Usher, see, Usher is indicative of a culture war that's going to happen just within the black male population. Because, see, Usher has had access to red pill awareness, red pill knowledge, red pill. He's had access to it because Kevin Samuels is mainstream. He's dead. He's gone. But he's mainstream. And when I say Kevin Samuels is dead and gone, I'm not allowed to say rest in peace, but I'm not saying it as a mockery. I mean, he's just literally, organically not with us anymore. But he's still mainstream even in his death. He did not go mainstream telling men, well, you need to do more, be more, and have more for these women. Because, you know, y'all remember when he was tough on men. I was his opponent when he was, because I'm like, you can tell men the truth, but why do you say it in a tone that indicates that these men were supposed to know this stuff beforehand? What the F is wrong with you? Then he started telling women what they needed to hear, and I'm like, yep, I support it 100%. Yep, double standards. Why? Because double standards are right. Double standards are necessary. You need double standards when it comes down to dealing with them in the West, not because it's okay to be a hypocrite. You need double standards when you're dealing with them in the West because they have double standards for you and they always have them. Everything dealing with them is about some sort of double standard. That's all feminism is. Feminism has never been anything other than them saying they're reacting to men's double standards and then coming with double standards that penalize the double standards to which they say they're reacting, even though they supported these same double standards, which are why they existed in the first place. Well, how come men get to sleep around but women don't? Well, first of all, men don't get to sleep around because it's actually more difficult for men. That's why when a man does, people don't get as disgusted. To me, fornication is fornication. But it's the women that make it worse when women do it because They're not even choosing to maritally screw good men. And they haven't been doing that for a long time. You think this phenomena of picking the bad dude, the reckless dude, carefree, happy-go-lucky dude is a new phenomena? It's not a new phenomena. The new phenomena is to circumvent your father to get to these guys and then brag about it. That's the new phenomena. There's always been a contingent of women that would want these dudes, and then there's always been a greater number of women that would want them just because they're experienced, because a few women did. The question is, if all these women are waiting to see who other women are going to socially and sexually approve before they decide to pursue these men, why is it that they were willing to follow a few women? Why is it that a few women, the first few women, were willing to go ahead and be the first to sexually and socially approve happy-go-lucky, carefree, reckless, and irresponsible men? What's the reason for that? They didn't do this for men that were actually maintaining infrastructure. I shouldn't say maintaining, but building and maintaining and designing infrastructure. They weren't doing this for those guys. So she's just the latest example of this. And I think that it should stay this way, that Keke Palmer should, I think other women should follow her example. I think they should do what Nicki Minaj did. If you're going to go ahead and get one of those street dudes that comes out with a record, especially for sick and disgusting crimes like his, pay the bill. Go ahead, pay that bill. Because Nicki Minaj set up in a concert and told women, girl, you run his pockets. He ain't got no her husband ain't got no pockets for her to run and can't get them. I don't even know if he's released from his last arrest, about which I heard, for not registering in California. I don't know. I only know that when it comes down to it, he ain't got no pockets to run. That's all I know. And she telling a crowd of women listening to her run his pockets. Girl, run that man pockets. One or two things is happening, Nicki Minaj. Either your husband is running your vagina and you ain't running his pockets, or you ain't running his pockets, and because of that, you're frustrated and he ain't running that vagina, in which case somebody else is running it, because we know how you get down. That's all it is. So which one is it? See, this is part of why I say what I say about this is because of stuff like this. It's a war. You're not involved in a gender conflict. You're involved in a gender war. It's a war of misinformation. They don't want you to know that you're involved in a gender war. All right, sorry about that. I only muted it for a second because I knew a sneeze was coming. I did not want to sneeze in you all's ear. And frankly, if I sneezed in you all's ear, I think some of you probably would have had a heart attack. So, next one up is Holly Berry. Holly Berry did not surprise us with her interview. When she said that her baby daddy, her ex-husband, used to call her the N-word, this is part of why it is that the Reverend Brother Pastor Deacon Dr. Hurricane Edward Allen Anderson and I, to use proper English, tell Western sisters that once they say anything bad about black men and they're not willing to tolerate criticism, hell, I say once they say anything bad about black men, period, because I can see you from two perspectives, the inside looking out, the outside looking in. Once they say anything bad about you at all, that they don't say about other men, I say, hey, date and marry out. Matter of fact, Edward Allen Anderson will say, date out. I'll say, no, don't just date out. No, marry out. You demand marriage from us. You demand commitment from us. marry out. And that's because she married a Western white man. He's not an Eastern European that's just racially white. No, she married a Western white man. Yo, shouts out to Charles Curry. That was generous. That was more than I expected. From the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind, thank you. And I mean that. I really appreciate that. Bilal, don't worry about that. It does work in the UK, but um, don't sweat it so much now because in the UK, it may take you time to get it in the UK. Um, it does work, but it may take time to get it. Now, there is, I heard that there's a way that people can send to you without, um, way that people can send to you money through an app called Wise, and that's worldwide, but they have to have a Wise account. That's what I've been told. And so I'm not really sure that, actually, yeah, I do have an idea to set that up. Yeah. So I might set that up later on. So, um, but yeah, don't sweat it if it may take you time to get it working in the UK, but it will work. Um, and so uh, I'm going to let them know and the employees know in the business again that another brother um, has helped to pay their salaries. They're gonna find this out. They're gonna learn this each month it happens. So back to what I was getting at. It's a part of his whole orientation. Holly Berry's ex-husband's orientation um, includes that. When they get angry, that N word comes out. And this is one of the things I wanted you to understand. Just like someone doesn't have to hate you to be angry with you, they don't have to hate you to call you the N word. Notice and remember that. Keep that in mind. They do not have to hate you to call you these racially um, derogatory names. They only have to be angry. Did her husband hate her? I doubt it. He married her. Does he hate her now? He might. See, sometimes real racists don't hate you until you don't accept their racism. They could be what they consider to be benevolently racist. Like, in other words, you may not hate your dog as long as your dog understands that you are a greater creation than she or he. You may love your dog, but you consider that you are superior to your dog. And as long as your dog accepts that, you don't hate that dog. But if you get another dog and that dog believes that dog is equal to you, you will hate that particular dog. And that dog will be lucky if you don't just take a bullet to its head and shoot it and kill it for daring to think that it's equal to you. And that's how many Western whites feel. Sometimes it's subconscious. That is actually something that some of these Bedouins are capable of feeling at times. No hatred and no anger until they forget that you're equal, but you remember. Sometimes they take correction very well and catch themselves because that is what the religion teaches. And other times they forget, then they get upset that you remembered and they don't remember. And they say, wait, you don't, they think that you forgot, in other words. They forgot you're equal and they think you forgot that they're normal and superior. That happens at times. So that can happen here. Well, I've told you that racism is not violent and it's not dangerous. If that can happen here, as I've explained, then what the hell you think it's going to be like over there where you are? What do you think you're going to face? Did you think you were going to face something different? Something better? Holly Berry proved that too. Some people don't like that idea, I know, but the fact is that you have to tell them to do this. and then say to them, hope you don't wind up like Holly Berry, because let's be honest, Holly Berry, there's no way she was going to be willing to do this for a brother, even as old as she is now. I think she's got a boyfriend that's a brother, but would she marry him? She don't want to wind up paying more. Women that demand marriage will turn around and not demand it anymore when they got money and they can buy a boyfriend, but they don't want to have to pay any alimony or child support later. And as a matter of fact, you remember, put a one in the chat if you can remember me giving Jeannie my credit for certain things. If you can remember me doing that, put a one in the chat. Me crediting Jeannie Mai when she dropped that whole boss babe feminism standpoint. You can recall that, put a one in the chat. Oh, y'all asleep, huh? It's Friday night and you all already asleep? Friday night for you guys. Actually, Saturday morning for some of y'all. But yeah, go ahead, put a one in the chat. If you remember that. If you don't, put a zero. While we're waiting on the feedback, that's true, Mr. Curry. A lot of times it is subconscious. And when people say stuff like this casually and you call them on it, they actually wind up getting a little bit offended that anybody said anything at all. A lot of times they look at it like, how dare you call me on what I said? Like, why are you questioning me about that? All right, Passport OG, you cracked me the fuck. You said 0.5. You're like, I kind of remember. And truth be told, I think this was before you and I knew of each other's channels that I said something. But so Jeannie Mai, to make a long story short, has a story about which we all know. She was married to an anonymous white fella. She would not submit. She wasn't going to be a matriarch at all. None of that stuff. They divorced. She said, dark meat on the side, but this is before she divorced him. She was like dark meat on the side, but as a main course, yeah, a white guy. She was pretty much saying if you're a responsible woman, you marry a white guy. You just sleep with black men on the side. And that's part of why I did say some of the same thing that sister said, fetishizing brothers. The thing is, what that still means is that brothers don't have to pay the same price as other men in order to get up in them guts. However, she was paying anyway. I mean, she made more money than her ex-husband. That was the issue. He left. He went ahead, remarried to a more traditional, submissive woman, their parents now. By the same token, Jeannie Mai left that feminism stuff, and I think she may really have left it. I think she may have seriously left that stuff behind. But the fact is that I believe Jeezy probably makes more money than she does. And if that is the case, that means that they still were not treated equally by her. It's kind of hard to say. But the question is this: because see, there's I heard and then I read later that she had to pay alimony to her ex-husband. I don't know if she still does. I think she went for a lump sum, if I'm not mistaken. I think she opted for the lump sum to pay the ex-husband. However, she had to pay according to two sources. One told me something in the comment, and then I read it later I can't even remember the website. So I can't prove it. I don't have the court documents. But the point is that if she had to pay, then it means nothing that she all of a sudden decided to become traditional. It just means she's not so foolish that she still didn't learn her lesson. She still learned it too late. So in a nutshell, she's probably thinking, well, okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna marry this brother. I'm gonna have this baby. He got to make all this money. I'm gonna marry this brother. I'm gonna have this baby. I'm gonna be traditional. And um, if it doesn't work, then I collect child support and alimony, not him. So I take back a lot of the credit that I gave her. Now, I don't credit her with learning the lesson because it was the right lesson to learn. I credit her with learning the lesson because she was forced to. But even then, she's like, well, let this brother pay the bill. No, because she decided to become the proxy to pimp a brother, financially speaking, to pay off Zaddy. And that I don't support. Now, I'm saying that because Holly Berry is pretty much playing the same game. And so even when these MRAs that are white, the white MGTOW want to talk about the laws and the courts, they're right about that. But the thing that the thing that we have to understand is that these uh, non-black, non-whites, and semi-black folk and semi-white, like literally Holly Berry, what they will do is they will go ahead and get a zaddy, and they wind up having to pay them off later. But brothers don't get these kinds of payouts. So when it comes down to reversing hypergamy, brothers have no brother has the right to sit up and talk to another brother about game when the fact is that the Wyatts, who are known and stereotyped for not having game even when they do, because they can have it or lack it. But since they're stereotyped, even by women, for not having any game, why is it that they can get these non-black, non-white, or pretty much non-white women to get with them, pay the bill, and then they cash out in a divorce? We know that we know that women in general do everything they can to protect their resources. If they work for the money, they do everything they can do to protect it, to not spend it, especially on a man. We know that they'll do that. Why don't they have these same safeguards when it comes to Zaddy? Why is it that Zaddy can offer them, or they propose to him, a legal commitment of marriage, opening themselves up to this, demanding no prenup, and he gets to say, I do, and then 10 years later, he's getting spousal support? What the F is up with that? All of a sudden, it doesn't matter what the laws of that state are. They don't know or they don't care. What is the divorce court judge going to be like? They don't know and they don't care. Because it's Zaddy. Meanwhile, while they're allowing this, they got us brothers arguing about game. They got game and don't even have to have game to have it. Stop and think about the fact that they don't have to have game, but they got game. In other words, they get the results without game that we have to have game to get and still can't get. The biggest game is to invent the concept of game, to require it arbitrarily, so as to justify picking who you would have picked anyway. And that is something that Western women have done, not men. So men in general don't have game compared to women in general. And in the West, the gulf and the gap is even wider. So when it comes to these dating roaches, y'all can't say nothing because you can't teach men game like this. These ladies are literally choosing on the basis of either whiteness or on the basis of non-blackness that they will exempt men that are closer to white than themselves and further from black than themselves from all of the rules. Those men get to just waltz in, say I do, bang, bang, squirt out some kids, and then 10 years later ask for child support, spousal support, custody, all that. And at least they'll get some alimony. They get to do this. Meanwhile, as a brother, you got to have your money, you got to have your muscles, you got to have all these things. And you think you winning because maybe a lady that's already married, if you got your muscle game tight, comes to you and says that you can be her side piece. And granted, it can feel like you're winning because you're getting the draws without having to take on a responsibility. So in that regard, I guess so. You're only winning in comparison to the husband who's really losing doubly, but you're still losing. And the thing is that, see, these Western Wyatt men know that this is the case. And this is part of why it is that they can sit up here and use these words, knowing mother cuss word well, that in a few years they're going to request a divorce, or if she requested, they're still going to collect, because she's not going to bring herself around to the point of filing for divorce within that state's laws time frame before which he would qualify. It's going to take her so long to bring herself to leave that zaddy that state's laws will have now qualified him to collect. And he ain't even got to hit that no more. He can take that money and use that to pursue the women of his own. Because understand this, one thing that does not happen, generally speaking, one thing that doesn't happen, when brothers get with a Becky and it doesn't work, especially if it's a marriage and then a divorce, they don't usually go to the next Becky. Usually not. Maybe another race, but usually not Becky. When Wyatt men get with women when they get with women of another race and it doesn't end very well, they don't usually go and marry another woman of that race. They get a Becky. That's usually how that works. Same thing oftentimes with Wyatt women. If they can get a Wyatt man afterwards, then that's what they'll get. And if they can't get one to commit, then they'll just have one on the side if they're collecting alimony, because then they can use the money. That's what Nicole Brown Simpson did. She was collecting from OJ. What did she have? She had them have black kids, but they're just about grown at that point. She had a white boyfriend. I'm sure she was paying. But then when it comes down to sisters really got to lose their money and hit the wall before they'll go from some other guy back to brothers, like Holly Berry. When she was with, I think he was a baseball player. When she was with him, she was making phone calls saying that he did all kinds of stuff, lying. And the way I know this is because a friend of mine worked for the Atlanta Police Department. And he knew one of the officers that responded one day. He responded. He was about to go into the house. And that's when her husband pulled up. He wasn't even there at the time she was lying. He just happened to show up right after the officer pulled up, and that's how they knew it wasn't true. That's what she does when it's a brother. She even gave an interview one day and said something about how before she was famous, she dated, I think, a doctor in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken, and he hit her and it caused her hearing problems in one of her ears. So when it's brothers, she lies. But when it's Zaddy, he can sit up and verbally abuse her, if not physically, and that's fine. So when I sit up and tell you it's a gender war, that's one of the reasons I say that, because frankly, we're seeing that you never get the same treatment as these others. So we can't sit up here and talk about game or any of this stuff. because we're always being treated as less than when it comes down to these other men in comparison, for the most part. Now, accountability commentary, shouts out to him, did say once that there's no gender war. And he said that's because there are no casualties on our side. It's only sisters taking L's. Now, with the rise of social media and with the confessions of Western women in general, and sisters always having to be the boldest confessors because that's how they stereotype themselves, then yes, they're taking L's more so than we are. That's true. And a court of public opinion that it is shifting to that end. But there's still a gender war. And that's because they're still fighting it. So technically it exists. But also there's a casualty that's still around. That casualty is these young black boys that are still being raised by sapphires and boom shikas and bonquishes and the stereotypes. Black fathers are involved, absolutely. But that doesn't mean black fathers always win custody. So the boys are still being raised by sapphires for the most part. And we already know that the sex through which these children are conceived, boys or girls, is pretty much a bunch of the women, the same few men, even though these few black men that become single fathers will still be more involved. These boys are being raised by sapphires. And Sapphire's sister and Sapphire's mama. They're the forgotten casualties, and that's why I keep calling our attention back to getting information to these young black boys without accepting, on the mother's terms, responsibility for feeding and clothing these boys. If you're going to slide him some supplies directly from you to him because y'all got it like that, y'all get along like that, then that's okay. It's up to you. But I'm telling you, number one, try to subvert her sole control over his mind. And two, do not accept her terms of having to provide. And if she says, well, are you going to pay for this, that, and the other? Say, you know what? Give me, if you really are inclined and you decide you bonded with him to the point you want to raise him, then say, sign over custody, and I absolutely will. I'll cover it all. You won't have to worry about nothing. When he requests to go visit you, he goes to visit you. But sign over custody, and then I'll take care of 100% of the expenses. And then some extra. That's if they're going to come to you and say, you've been telling my son this, that, and the other, but you don't do, and say, well, I mean, if you want me to do this, sign over custody, and I will raise him. And you're welcome to visit, or he's welcome to go. Well, actually, you know what? You're welcome to come visit. So I know you won't run off. That's what you do. You pretty much say, look, my house, my rules, my roof, my rules, my gold, my rules. But we let them, that also sends a message to these sisters, that even to the individuals amongst them, and I only say sisters because they're sisters to each other, not to us, but it sends a message to them that even if they're going to fight a gender war, and we're not really, even if they don't think they're fighting a gender war, even if they don't think so, they are fighting one, and that we will fight back for the purposes of liberating the minds of their boys, because we know damn sure they ain't gonna do it. The boys that are still being raised by them are the forgotten casualties. That's where the simps come from. They're the forgotten casualties, or the casualties of which we may not even be aware, some of us. Because sisters with custody of boys still outweighs dads who have custody of girls or boys. And we know mom and auntie and grandmama ain't going to inform the boys about women's games, or that they even play games. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they even show what these games are, and those are rare cases, but for the most part, they will do exactly what Stephens Cole's mom did and grandmom did. He said it. He said mom and grandmom told him, maybe it was mom and aunt, but it was mom and one of her relatives that said to him, be a good man, your day gonna come. His day came when he stopped doing what they said. But understand, when his day came, what was his day? Well, before his day, it was being used. It wasn't just being left alone. It was being used, but not being pleased. On the flip side, we already know. We might underinform young black boys, but some of you would say, well, I don't think we should be telling young black boys anything if they ain't ours to tell. Hold up. If you have a girl or your brother or sister has a daughter and you're the uncle, you will tell your daughters, your nieces, your younger sisters, your younger cousins, you will tell them not only games that men play, you will tell them these games as if most men will play these games, even though nowadays most men aren't involved at all. You will still over inform your daughters, sisters, nieces, cousins, granddaughters of men's games just to ensure that they protect themselves. You will have them protecting themselves from good men when they're young, and you only tell them to loosen up enough to show interest in a man when they get too old. When the men that they would want for themselves and that you want for them ain't gonna be interested because now she's too old. That's the only time you do it. So you're playing the game the opposite way. But then you don't want to turn around. You don't, some of you that are against that message, you don't want to turn around and tell these young black boys what they need to know. Meanwhile, you telling young black girls in your family not only what they need to know, but you overstate it just to make sure that they're over protected. And I say overprotected because, again, there's nuance to this. There's a balance, and you will push them beyond the balance to it ain't nobody. And then when they get older, they're doing shameful things. Go years, no dates. And if they happen to pass away relatively young and you clearing out all their stuff, you find out how they was getting by. Oh, I didn't know she owned one of these. Bzzz. Oh, turn that off. Oh, don't touch that. That's what's going on. Because you went beyond the balance. And don't say only black folks. No, we bark and growl. I mean, as black males with female relatives, we bark and growl about any man try to get with my cousin. We do that stuff. When they're young and attractive and cute. They get older, we stop doing that. We start looking for in-laws. That's a good man. How come you don't like that man? We're doing it the wrong way. But don't sit up and let anybody tell you that it's only black men that do that. I'm telling you now, it ain't just black men. Better when fathers do the same thing. If I could afford it, I could go now to some of these, hell, not even Bedouin dads, some of them educated. I could go to Arab dads in general now. All I got to do is find out who has a daughter that's beyond the age that other men want to marry, and I can marry her. I'm gonna be like, wait a minute, she 35? She ain't married nobody? Hold up. Let me ask her some questions and see if she'd be happy with someone like me. Really? Yeah. I ain't got a lot of money, but I know how to be a husband. I watched my dad do it my whole life. Mom said he was pretty good at it. So let's see. If I'm not a type, I'm just not. If I am, let me see how happy I can make. Oh, all right. Well, all right. Let's set this up. Yeah, I could do that. But the thing is, she got to be beyond the age in which most other men want to marry. And that's because these Arab dads didn't do the same thing. They ain't the most balanced men in the world. The religion is balanced. The people following ain't. They go by culture. And like I said, they put reputation above everything else, even above the religion at times. They shouldn't, but they do. And they pay for it. They pay a harsh price. When you got a lot of these women that are getting old, unmarried, that means you got a lot of dads and older brothers that got to take care of them. And some of them are like, look, I'll pay the dowry so that she can get married. Yeah, but you waited until she was 28. And other men are like, bro, that ain't, because men here will say 30 ain't young. Men here will say 30 is not old or young, but we want them young. 25 is where they stop for the most part. A lot of these guys are like, look, 25. After 25, we might be nice about age 26, 27. We're going to look and say what we're going to look at the family, because at that point, it's somebody coming to us trying to find her husband. And we're going to look at them and say, why'd you wait till she was 27? 4 years ago, she was 23. Why didn't you start looking in? Because she was 23 and men would want to marry her. Oh, so you didn't look because men would want to marry you. Dummy. That's how these cats roll. It's a scrubble with a capital K in the middle. SKRUGGLE. It's a struggle here. Marriages are too expensive, but even these high dowries start dropping. And it ain't always the ladies that say, I want a house and gold and a car because I'm 23. It ain't always the ladies saying that. A lot of times the ladies have sense. They'd like to get married one day. It's mom and dad, older brothers start talking that crazy stuff. We want a house and gold and a car for you or for all of us before you get married. Family honor, reputation. People don't respect families that let their daughters get married for easily affordable dowries. You know, they start with that stuff. Man, F the culture and F your reputation. What did God say? What did Allah tell his prophets, peace be upon them, to say? Including the last one. Make the halal easy and the haram difficult. Halal meaning what some of you would say what is kosher. That's how some of you would translate it, to give you an idea. But make that easy and make what is forbidden to be difficult. These folks turn around and made everything difficult. So don't let anybody tell you that it's only black dads that do that. It's not. No. We share a lot of bad habits with some other people, including these folks. One of my students said, I'm 32 now. I'll never be able to get married. With these salaries that they're offering me, I'll never be able to get married. My parents want to see their grandkids. I'm never going to be able to introduce them to the grandkids, because if I ever can get married, I'll be old. They'll be gone. And I was like, yeah, it's not the economy, bro. It's the culture. If everybody's salary went up, every family would just raise the dowry. That's all that would happen. People are not going, your folks have already shown that they're not going to learn until your population starts dropping, because old people die with no offspring. And your society is insisting that they become like Japan before they learn anything. So you know what? Good riddance to the culture. You can marry someone that is not from your culture, and you can afford to get married. And you can introduce some half non-Arab grandkids to your parents, or you can stay in your situation now. You don't have the option, because there's no way everybody's going to have the option that everybody wants. It doesn't work like that. We were told not to put culture and tribe and reputation and all these other dumb, shallow things in front of Allah's revelation. And that's exactly what the Bedouin have done, the Arabs in general. And now look. So they're facing not what is a gender war yet, but they're facing certain difficulties because they went out of balance. Don't let anybody tell you it's just black folks. It's only black people that do this stuff. No. Black folks are the only ones that have a specific combination that we have. Every group has that, as I stated earlier on in this live stream. But understand that you can find out, if you're willing to be nuanced enough to get to know other groups of people, not because you love them and want to be them, but so that you can learn from them good and bad stuff they don't really mean to teach you as well. You can learn all of that stuff. If you're willing to get to know them for these reasons, to learn on your terms from their successes and from their failures, you will see exactly what will work and what will not. And so everything I tell you, everything I advise you to do, and everything I advise you to not do, like who to not marry, is based on what I've been able to see watching other groups of people. I've actually spent time with them. In order to do this, there were years in my 20s when I had to spend more of my free time with Black non-Americans than I did with Black Americans in order to learn certain things, and even listening to some of their non-Black friends to learn other things, and coming up with a very clear picture. And I still got a lot to learn. But in order to be able to tell you what I'm doing, what I'm telling you now, it has been longer than just the 9, almost 10 years I've been living here in Saudi Arabia. Even when I lived in the States, I had to do a lot of research in my free time. And I can tell you now, if there'd been all this ADOS, FBA, gangbanging talk, not talk of distinction, but divisive talk back then, I would have long since been considered a sellout, and I would not have been even able to reach any of you to tell you what I've learned. And that's why it is that we have to be careful and nuanced about the difference between, the distinction between distinction and division. ADOS and FBA are distinct nationalities within a race. Or it's a distinct nationality within a race. Somebody decided to introduce it as if to be a gang and gang banging. Hell, actual gangs get along better. Now we got people sitting up here arguing with each other about who's FBA and who's not, and what that means that somebody's allowed to say or think or opine, or what they're allowed to report if they observe it. Ask what I see about that. He and I both had to go through the heartbreak of watching Black folks squabble about nationality. Instead of just learning the distinctions, squabbling about nationality. Maybe one day I'll do a live stream about how that only serves the interest of Massa Zaddy and the Negress gynocracy of the Anglophone West. Maybe I'll do a live stream about that. But just understand that in the meantime, that's what it does. All that squabbling only serves the interest of Zaddy and the Anglophone, Zaddy and the gynocracy. That's it. It only serves those interests. All of that talk of who's who and nationality, and it doesn't serve anybody else. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve the brothers from the continent. It doesn't serve, sorry about that. That was my phone ringing. It doesn't serve brothers from the continent. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve brothers in the islands. It serves the feminist gynocracy matriarchy. It serves the hyenocracy, and it serves the racist. Because you see, when we start comparing notes, understand this. Usually when somebody works to divide you from somebody else, it's because there are notes that they don't want you to compare. That is why Zaddy at one time used to sit up and talk about how, and I know they used to do this, because I learned about this in the 90s. Guess who taught me this? Two different groups of people. Ethiopians that lived in Atlanta and Liberians that lived in Atlanta used to tell me exactly what was going on. Mind you, these two groups did not know each other. They did not meet often because they weren't running in the same circles. I was the common link between them. And they used to say that at work, oftentimes these white folk would tell them, "Oh, you're so different from the African Americans. You actually work. I mean, they're just lazy and entitled and think everybody owes them everything." And then they would turn around. But I mean, you know what they say to us? Well, the Africans are less educated and less civilized and less exposed. And they don't like you. They said, "You're not a real African." So I knew what they would tell us. And they would also come to us and say to us, "Well, they accept us." Now, of course, to us, that's a bad sign right there. They accept us and they love us and they work hard and we get along fine, and you're just a problem. And we'd be like, okay, so they sold out. And they knew that when they said that to us. Then they turn around and tell the Africans that we African Americans are bad news. The Ethiopians told me about them saying this at the job, and Liberians told me about them saying this, not only at the job, but even in some of the schools back in Liberia. So what I'm saying is that when these folks would sit up and tell us these things so that we would look at each other, regardless of gender back then in the 90s, just nationality, so that we would look at each other with suspicion and distrust. It's because they didn't want us comparing notes about what the hell they did, both as colonizer and as enslaver. They did not want us talking about this stuff. And now you got some hyenas sitting up here talking about ADOS, FBA. And they got brothers barking and growling about this stuff. What's the reason? Because while they're sitting up and telling us about ADOS and FBA and we need to be against everybody else, they're going to turn around and tell the Yardie, Yard man, Yankee boy not worth nothing. And then they'll turn around and tell them the same thing about the Trini and the Bahamian. And they'll tell the Bayesian the same about the Jamaican and the Bahamian and the Trini. You see, they're going to do that. And then the whole time they're going to tell all the island ones that us Yankees ain't worth nothing and that the Africans sold them. Meanwhile, they went through both colonization and enslavement. Just like the Congo did. What is the reason? The hyenas don't want us comparing notes, and while they're getting us to argue so that we don't compare notes, they're exporting feminism across the same lines that they're telling us to which to pay so much attention obsessively. That is what I wanted you to understand. It's the same thing. Zaddy tried to divide by nationality. Now you got one gender trying to divide the other gender by nationality. So that we don't understand that they're busy talking to the same sister or the same Nigerian they want you and me to fight against and gang up on, or want him to gang up on us. Meanwhile, they don't want us to know that they're in chat rooms with his sister. They don't want him to know. They don't want us to know that she is in the same chat room with his sister, telling her about the patriarchy and the black man is conquered. You see? Divide and conquer is not only the exclusive tool of Master Zaddy. Never was. So with that being said, I appreciate you all listening. I know it's late Friday night, early Saturday morning for many of y'all, and y'all are ready to get out there. And some of y'all are ready to hit them streets. Some of y'all already hit the streets and you just left your phones on. But I really do appreciate that. And I hope that what I said benefited. And I, again, would like to really, really, really thank today Charles Curry and V for coming through. And for the previous days, Brother Dickerson, S. Jock, Robert Campbell, for coming through more recently. I will try to go live about once a week. I don't know my work schedule yet, but if it allows, and I'll try to go live once a week with a good advance notice. And I really do appreciate you all's help. I'm not waiting for questions. If you do have them, you can just put them in the comments underneath, and I'll try to answer them as best I can. As always, thank you all for listening, and I hope it benefited. Black heart, black mind, blackout. And thank you for flying again with us on Jet Black Airways, in which jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with me until the wings and the wheels fall off. And on your way out of the Jet Black aircraft, you may punch the Cash App button if you have not done so, either for a small amount for me or any amount for Brother Hayes. Although he hasn't said that he's, I think he may be all right now. He may actually be all right. Only amounts that are small for you that you will not miss. Only. And thank you for previous support and for any future support. Gender justice forever.